Chapter 11 26 Nine Swords Trial, 3. The moment Yuan's Empyrean Overlord clashed with the first sword, an intense ripple swept the area while lifting a layer of the ground into the air. When the spectators saw this, they sighed in relief knowing that they'd made the right decision by distancing themselves from the platform. Once the dust settled and the spectators could finally see the situation on the platform, they were surprised to see an uninjured figure standing there. He actually managed to survive that? And he doesn't even seem a bit fazed. What a monster! Before the spectators could even fully grasp the situation, the second sword appeared, and it was almost 2 times bigger than the first sword. This stunned the spectators. If the second sword is already this massive, would the later swords fill the entire sky? A few seconds later, the second sword descended from the sky, creating an even stronger ripple. Boom! The entire ground shook and everyone could feel themselves being lifted off the ground for a brief second. Good Lord! The sword may be twice as big, but the strength is at least 3 times stronger than the previous sword. And this is only the strength of the second sword? There's no way he's going to survive the next one. After blocking the second strike, Yuan could feel a slight tingly sensation in his hands, but such a thing can be neglected completely. The second strike is already this powerful. What's the ninth strike going to be like? Yuan couldn't help but wonder to himself. The third strike will descend within 5, 4, 3. Yuan quickly cleared his mind and focused on the situation at hand. Ha! Yuan swung the Empyrean Overlord upwards, clashing with the colossal sword in the sky. Clang! The spectators that believed they were in a safe distance were quickly swept up by the force and sent tumbling even further away. By now, the entire platform was shattered, and there were fissures all around the area, looking as though a war had taken place there. Once the dust settled, the people were able to see Yuan's condition, and to nobody's surprise, he wasn't in perfect shape this time. The clothes around his arm were torn, and his arm was soaked in blood. Despite this, Yuan wasn't actually in any serious condition, and the injuries on his arm instantly healed due to his perfect regeneration. However, Yuan would be lying if he'd said that he wasn't nervous about the remaining 6 strikes. I haven't felt this nervous in a while. He smiled inwardly, feeling a sudden urge of excitement coursing through his profound veins. When the fourth sword appeared in the sky, Yuan swallowed nervously. As expected, the sword had grown in size, and it was even emitting sword chi this time. If I want to defeat this trial, I will need to use more than just my raw strength. That sword is exuding sword chi. This is my first time seeing this. I have never even heard about this before. As the fourth sword descended, Yuan's eyes flickered with a profound light, and his aura exploded outwards. Vanishing Ghost's soundless blade. The Empyrean Overlord was cloaked in a thin yet dense layer of sword chi before it was sent flying at the incoming sword. Boom! Hundreds of sword lights scattered in all directions from the sword chi's impact, terrifying the spectators who scrambled to dodge it. A few were not so lucky and were struck by the sword light. Fortunately, nobody lost their lives, but their bodies were badly injured, and it was as though they were struck by a real sword. Mother! Are you okay? Tian Yinyu's heart skipped a beat when she noticed Tian Suin's arm bleeding. I am fine. It's just a scratch. She nodded. Anyways, let's get further away. Something tells me that this will only get worse. We'll die at this rate. The spectators scattered like flies once again. That one was painful. Yuan sighed inwardly after blocking the fourth strike, which had cost him both of his arms. Most would consider Yuan to be crippled now that both of his arms are broken, but within seconds, his perfect regeneration kicked in and restored his arms to its original state. This monstrous healing ability terrified the spectators who were beginning to wonder if Yuan was even human. The fifth sword appeared shortly after, and to everyone's surprise, there was no longer just one sword in the air, but 2, and they were both big enough to cover the sky. Heavens! There are 2 swords now? There's no freaking way this is possible. The spectators were in a daze as their eyes stared blankly at the covered sky. Yuan took a deep breath after seeing this. Young master. I don't doubt your abilities, but this is. Feng Yuxiang spoke up in a worried tone. I'm not giving up when I'm not even halfway through the whole thing. Yuan said with a nervous smile on his face. Why are you pushing yourself this hard? What could possibly be worth risking your life? I don't know, but I will find out soon. Yuan could only hear a defeated sigh from Feng Yuxiang before he swung the Empyrean Overlord at the two swords in the sky that was descending at the same time. Young master! Brother Yuan! Those watching from within his body cried out loud when they saw his arms flying off his body. Yuan gritted his teeth as intense pain circulated throughout his body. This isn't as bad as when I first experienced body tempering. He muttered as his arms quickly regenerated. Holy shit! Did you see that? His severed arms regenerated almost instantly. What kind of technique is that? The spectators were more impressed by his regenerating abilities than his strength that endured the fifth strike. Of course, most of them were terrified, as they doubted whether Yuan was human or actually a demon in disguise. Impressive! A calm voice suddenly resounded in the area, catching everyone off guard. Chapter 11:27 Nine Swords Trial, 4. Yuan looked around after hearing this familiar voice, and he quickly noticed that a figure had suddenly appeared in front of him. This figure was wearing an ordinary mask, yet his body was oozing with an overwhelming aura that naturally made everyone there revere him. That's the Nameless Emperor. The Nameless Emperor has shown up. A few spectators quickly recognized this masked man's identity. What do you want? Yuan calmly asked him. Nothing much. I'm just here to congratulate you for surviving through half of my 9 swords. Only 8 people have achieved this before you, so you're the 9th. A fitting number, don't you think? And he continued, however, do you know how many people have survived the 6th sword? 0. If you wish to survive more than 5 strikes, you'll need to do more. Think outside the box. I will give you 5 minutes to think, that is if you still want to challenge me. The masked figure disappeared into the air as suddenly as he appeared. Think outside the box, huh? Yuan turned to look at the statue and recalled the previous 5 strikes. 2 minutes later, he sat on the uneven ground and closed his eyes as countless images flashed by his mind. I see. I finally understand the true purpose of this place. When Yuan opened his eyes, it shone with enlightenment. The 6th strike will descend within 5. The countdown started again, and 3 massive swords appeared in the sky above him. Yuan took a deep breath and stood in a stance that he'd never done before. A few seconds later, all 3 swords slashed at Yuan's tiny body that was like an ant's in comparison. A vicious aura exuded from the Empyrean Overlord and Yuan. 9 supreme swords. First sword strike. Yuan muttered as he unleashed his first strike, sending an unfathomable sword light towards the sky. Clang! All 3 swords in the sky disappeared the instant they clashed with Yuan's technique. You have learned 9 supreme swords. 9 supreme swords. Rank, Mythic. Mastery level, 1. Description: a supreme sword art that consists of 9 different strikes, each stronger than the next. Legend has it that the 9th strike has the prowess to cut even gods. After destroying the 6th strike, Yuan sneered, that was the 6th strike? What a scam! In reality, that was only as strong as the 3rd strike of the real technique. Now that he understood the technique, Yuan realized the true prowess of the 9 supreme swords. Although the 9 swords trial claimed the previous attack to be the 6th strike, it was actually not even half of the technique's true potential. After all, this was only a test. If the real technique was displayed, nobody would be able to pass it, not even Yuan himself. What kind of sword technique did he just use? It totally obliterated the 3 swords. The spectators almost couldn't believe their eyes. After all, Yuan had barely survived 2 swords, yet he'd somehow destroyed 3 swords with ease? That didn't make sense no matter how they looked at it. Not bad. You grasped the true purpose of this trial. Since it has come to this, let's just skip all the way to the last strike, since it wouldn't make much of a difference. The nameless emperor's voice resounded again. Suddenly, a sword appeared in the sky. However, there was only a single sword, and its size was that of an ordinary sword. This puzzled the spectators greatly, as it looked like the trial had given up to them. Naturally, that wasn't the case, and Yuan knew that very well. While this single ordinary-looking sword may seem insignificant to the others, it looked like an indomitable mountain to Yuan. Looks like I will have to go all out if I don't want to lose my life here. He swallowed nervously. Whoosh! Yuan activated God of War's astral arts while using all of his soul strength, making the avatar as big as a mountain. Heavens! This guy is full of unfathomable techniques. The spectators fell to their butts after seeing his avatar that covered the sky more than the swords did. Whenever you're ready. The nameless emperor spoke again. Yuan gritted his teeth and swung at the statue before him, utilizing the God of War's astral arts as well as his newly learned technique by combining them together. When both sides clashed with each other, it created a terrifying sword chi explosion that literally created a massive crater in the ground. Fortunately, the spectators were smart enough to distance themselves before that happened, but even then, some of them could not escape the sword chi and ended up bleeding from it. Once the huge dust storm settled, the spectators were able to see the situation. Hovering above the center of the crater was Yuan, and he was half naked with sword cuts all over his body. And unlike before, his injuries didn't instantly recover, almost as though his regeneration ability was blocked by the sword marks. Amazing! To think that was just the prowess of the 6th strike. I cannot wait to see how powerful the 9th strike will be if I ever get to use it. Yuan couldn't help but praise the technique. Although the technique was mythic rank just like the God of War's astral arts, it was entirely different in terms of prowess. Though, one could argue that both techniques serve a different purpose. While the God of War's astral arts is a unique technique that enhances the prowess of other techniques, the 9 supreme swords is a technique meant purely for destruction, just like the heaven-splitting sword strike. Congratulations, you have passed the trial flawlessly. The nameless emperor appeared before Yuan again. Take this, it's your reward. He extended his hand with his palms open, offering Yuan whatever was on it. A silver key. Yuan mumbled in a dazed voice as he gazed at it. His reward for passing this ridiculous trial was just a mere key? Chapter 1128 Sword Pagoda. Yuan accepted the silver key shortly after. Although the reward may seem insignificant at glance, it obviously had a significance behind it. Of course, Yuan saw the 9 supreme swords as the real reward for this trial, so he didn't think too much about it. Once the spectators were certain that the trial had ended, they started crowding around Yuan. Young lord, can you please tell me your name? Which family do you belong to, young master? Please get away from my friend. Can't you see that he's tried? Shoo! Shoo! Tian Yanyu rushed over and started chasing away the crowd. Are you okay? She then asked him. Yeah, I'm fine. He nodded. Really? Your injuries don't seem to be healing anymore. Tian Yanyu said as she stared at his half-naked bloodied body. Due to the lingering sword chi in your wounds, your regeneration has slowed down greatly. It'll eventually heal itself, and it isn't as bad as it seems, I promise. Yuan smiled. Hey! There's something wrong with the 9 swords trial. It's not restoring the damage. It should have started by now. Someone there suddenly shouted. Normally, even if the entire platform disappeared, the 9 swords trial would restore all damage dealt to the land after every challenger. Maybe it's slowed down because of the severe destruction? The damage this time around is incomparably large. Someone said. That makes sense. Let's give it some time. Unbeknownst to these people and the world, Yuan would become the last person to partake in the Nine Swords trial because it never repaired itself no matter how long passed, as it no longer had a reason to exist. Alright, let's head to our next destination, the Sword Pagoda. Yuan said. Seriously? You should at least clean yourself before you go anywhere. Tian Suyin said with a slight frown on her face. I'll clean myself when we come across some water as we go there. Thus, Yuan left the scene shortly after with Tian Yenyu and Tian Suyin following him from behind. Some of the people there tried to follow him, but they quickly gave up after receiving a threatening glare from Yuan. On their way to the Sword Pagoda, Yuan stopped at a river to quickly wash his blood-stained body. Are you really peeking at a man washing himself? When did you become this pervert? Tian Suyin scolded Tian Yenyu when she noticed her daughter was taking peeks at Yuan in the river. Shut up. Who's peeking at him? I looked for a second because I noticed that his body had healed from the sword cuts. She stuttered while defending her honor. Tian Suyin couldn't help but also take a look after hearing her daughter's words. You're right. Although there are still a few sword cuts left, the majority of them are gone. It's only been 2 days since then, and I didn't see him consume any recovery treasures during this time either. Either he has a powerful technique or he has a heavenly constitution. It's probably a heavenly constitution. After all, it would actually be weird for someone as talented as him to not have a unique physique. Tian Yenyu said. He said he's not from the upper heavens. Do you believe him? Tian Suyin suddenly asked. Does it matter where he came from? Tian Yenyu raised an eyebrow. Tian Suyin could answer her question. I understand why you doubt him, but he should have proven himself to be trustworthy by now, especially after everything he's done for us. Actually, that only makes him more suspicious. I cannot understand his intentions for the life of me. The more I think about it, the more I question it and the more suspicious I get. Then stop thinking about it. The moment you do, you'll feel much better, just like I did. Tian Yenyu shrugged. She also doubted Yuan's intentions before, but she has since stopped caring about it. Sorry for the wait. I'm ready to continue. Yuan approached them a moment later. The ladies turned around to see Yuan wearing a fresh new set of robes, and their eyes widened with surprise after seeing how flashy his new clothes were compared to his old clothes. Are you actually royalty? Tian Yenyu couldn't help but ask him after seeing his golden dragon robe, her face blushing non-stop. No, this pair of robes was gifted to me by a friend. I don't normally wear them due to how flashy they appear, but since they're very durable and not easily torn, I have decided to wear them. I don't want to change into new clothes after every challenge, after all. Yuan smiled. Are you okay, senior? Yuan looked at Tian Suyin, who was biting down her lips, looking like she was enduring something. Don't blush. Don't blush. Don't blush. I'm a married woman. I'm a married woman. Tian Suyin repeatedly cried inwardly as she silently nodded her head. Then let's go. After another 3 days, they arrived at the Sword Pagoda. The Sword Pagoda looked like a massive sword stabbing the ground from far, but if one got close enough, they would be able to see that it was actually a pagoda with a large sword stabbed in the center of it, almost like a skewer. There were hundreds if not thousands of people gathered outside the Sword Pagoda at this moment. There's a lot of people here. Tian Yenyu mumbled when she saw the crowd there. Well, only 10 people can challenge the Sword Pagoda at a time, and each person takes on average 30 minutes to finish, so you can imagine why there are so many people here. Tian Suyin said. Wait. So everyone here is waiting to enter the Sword Pagoda? This will take forever if we wait for our turn. Is there any way to enter earlier? Yuan asked. There are two ways to skip the line. Either you pay the people in the front of the line to take their spot, or you can force your way through it with your strength. After all, there is no real queue here. The strongest will go first, while the weakest will go last. It's just how this place works. Tian Suyin explained. Chapter 1129 Sword Pagoda, 2. I will go ahead. The two of you should stay back. I will probably make a few enemies in this place, and I don't want to trouble you too. Yuan said as he stared at them with a serious expression. That's only natural. I have already used my chance in this place, so I cannot enter it even if I wish for a second chance. Tian Suyin shrugged. Every individual is only allowed one chance, and this rule is consistent across every trial within the Nameless Emperor's tomb, so if one had entered Sword Pagoda already, they wouldn't be able to challenge it again even if 100 years passes. I will come back to challenge it once I am more prepared. Since this is my first time entering the Nameless Emperor's tomb, I am going to take it easy. Tian Yenyu said. Alright, then I will be back soon. Yuan left their side and began approaching the Sword Pagoda. Once he was close enough, Yuan flew into the air to avoid the crowd surrounding the Sword Pagoda. The people beneath him immediately noticed him, but none of them did anything and merely watched in silence. However, as he got closer to the Sword Pagoda, Yuan would be assaulted by spiritual attacks from the cultivators. He silently scoffed at these attacks that were barely noticeable and continued forward. The front of the Sword Pagoda was almost empty with 10 individuals standing out from the rest of the crowd. There was a good gap between these 10 individuals and the rest of the crowd, and their aura was much more intense than the others except for one individual. It was obvious that these 10 individuals would be the first ones to enter the Sword Pagoda. When Yuan landed before these 10 individuals, they all turned to look at him, and some of them even openly sneered in a mocking manner. Hey, brat, are you blind? Can't you see that the line is back there? Scram while I am asking nicely. One of the 10 individuals, a bald bulky man, suddenly spoke in a loud voice. Yuan glanced at him and responded nonchalantly, Are you sure you're not the blind one here? The bald man gritted his teeth and started approaching Yuan while veins appeared on his head. He's right. If you don't want to die a pointless death, don't take another step. A calm voice suddenly resounded, instantly halting the bald man's movement. Yuan turned to look at the person who just spoke. He was the only individual there without an aura, but Yuan could tell at glance that he was the strongest there. This person was an exceedingly handsome young man with silver hair and blue eyes, his body oozing with confidence and arrogance, and he appeared to be around the same age as Yuan. You probably can't tell because of the difference between your strengths, but he's not someone you can handle. The silver-haired man spoke again. The bald man didn't utter any words and merely stood there with a resisting look on his face. Despite not knowing the silver-haired man's identity, the bald man didn't dare to talk back. Shortly before Yuan's arrival, this silver-haired man showed up out of the blue and silenced everyone there with just his overwhelming aura alone, which was an incredible feat considering that most people there were spirit kings. I don't recognize you, so you probably didn't come from the same place as I, or you're disguised. What's your name, young friend? The silver-haired man suddenly approached Yuan with a friendly smile. Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang, huh? The silver-haired man glanced at his golden dragon robe before continuing, I didn't think I would meet someone of your caliber down here, much less a human wearing that sort of outfit. The silver-haired man showed his palm and fist and gave Yuan a courteous bow. My name's Long Chen, one of 4 dragons and phoenixes, not that you'll know what it means. Yuan raised his eyebrows in a puzzling manner. He couldn't understand the intentions of this Long Chen. However, he understood that this Long Chen probably came from the upper heavens based on his language. Yuan returned the bow. I hope you won't mind me standing here with you guys. Of course not. If you wanted, you could easily go after me. Long Chen said with a mysterious smile, implying that he was stronger than Yuan. What if I want to go after you, too? Yuan smiled back. Ha ha ha. Longchen started laughing. I don't recall the last time someone has talked back to me. The lower heavens are full of entertainment. Why didn't I come down here sooner? The people there swallowed nervously after hearing Longchen's words. Although they had no proof that his words were true, none of them doubted his words. So you're from the upper heavens, huh? Which one? Did you come down here specifically for the nameless emperor's tomb? Yuan suddenly asked. I will answer all of your questions if you play a game with me and win. Longchen said. What kind of game? I was going to enter the Sword Pagoda as soon as possible, but I have decided to enter with you. Whoever climbs the highest will win. To make this more enticing, I will even throw in some royal grade spirit jade. The people there gasped in shock after hearing such words. A single royal grade spirit jade easily cost tens of millions of spirit stones. Only someone from the upper heavens could possibly gamble such a resource so casually. Interesting. And what if you win? What do you want from me? If I win, you will answer a few of my questions. Of course, I don't expect you to have any spirit jades. Longchen said. Sounds good. Yuan nodded. Good. The doors to the Sword Pagoda suddenly opened, and a figure was flung out of it like trash the very next second. When this happened, the doors that had been closed this entire time remained open, at least until the next participant entered. Longchen was supposed to enter the Sword Pagoda at this moment, but he didn't, and nobody dared to steal the spot, so they all just stood there in silence. Chapter 1130 Sword Pagoda 3. The person who'd just come out of the Sword Pagoda was extremely confused when he saw the situation outside. Normally, people would be fighting to enter the Sword Pagoda whenever a new slot is opened, but things were different this time. Everyone stood still, almost as though they'd all become statues. This person stood there awkwardly until another person came out of the Sword Pagoda and a second slot was opened. Are you ready? Longchen asked as he stared at Yuan. Whenever you are. He nodded. They both turned to face the Sword Pagoda and approached the entrance while walking side by side. Good luck, Xiaoyang. Longchen mumbled in a confident voice right before disappearing into the Sword Pagoda. You too. Yuan smiled. Everyone there released a sigh of relief once the two of them were gone. Just who the heck were those two? The bald man couldn't help but ask. I don't know about that man with the black dragon robe, but that silver-haired man is definitely a young master with a powerful background in the upper heavens. The question is which one? The fourth heaven? The fifth? Sixth? I don't think we'll ever know the truth. Someone else said. So you think that Xiaoyang won't win the bet? Of course he won't. No matter how talented he is, he won't beat Longchen. Hadn't you felt his aura not long ago? He may be a spirit king within the nameless emperor's tomb, but his real cultivation is definitely far superior. But one's cultivation doesn't matter in these trials, only their innate talent. We'll know the answer soon. Let's just wait and see what happens. He actually picked a fight with someone from the upper heavens? His arrogance knows no bounds. Tiansuin couldn't help but shake her head after witnessing everything from afar. He'll be fine, probably. By the way, do you know what is this 4 dragon and phoenixes that was mentioned? Tian Yenyu asked. No, I don't. But if I had to take a guess, it's probably some title given to geniuses in the upper heavens. Most likely. Good luck, Xiaoyang. When Yuan entered the Sword Pagoda, he found himself on an empty platform in the middle of nowhere. There were no walls or ceiling in the background, nothing but the void and the massive platform, almost as though he was in the starry sky without the stars. A figure wearing a pig mask suddenly appeared 10 meters away from Yuan. A mask with a pig's face? This was the first thing Yuan noticed due to its oddity. I sense more than one soul within you. Unfortunately, they are not allowed to assist you even though they are your servants. The masked figure spoke, and before they realized, Xiaohua and the others were forced out of Yuan's body and were transported to another platform where they could only spectate. Brother Yuan. Young master. Don't worry about me. I was going to do this by myself, anyway. Yuan smiled at them. He turned to look at the masked man and asked, "What now?" Before we begin, allow me to tell you the rules of the Sword Pagoda. First and foremost, if you die here, you will die for real. However, you are allowed to quit at any time during the trial. There are 7 total floors in the Sword Pagoda. In order to climb the Sword Pagoda, you must defeat the guardian on each floor, and you will be given a restriction on each floor including this floor. These restrictions will carry over to the next floor, so you will have a total of 7 restrictions placed on your body by the time you reach the 7th floor. Statistically speaking, only 1 in 10,000 will pass the first floor. 1 in 100,000 will pass the second floor, and 1 in a million will clear the third. However, after the 3rd floor, you are more likely to encounter a miracle treasure during a stroll than to pass them. Now on to your weapons. You are not allowed to use any weapons from the outside. We will provide you with one, and they are all on par with divine-grade treasures in terms of quality. Lastly, you will be given a choice for your reward if you manage to clear the floor after every floor. You have a minute to mentally prepare yourself before I start the trial. The masked man fell silent after that sentence. Yuan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. A minute later. The trial for the first floor of the Sword Pagoda will now begin. A restriction has been placed on your body. I will make my first move in 10 seconds. Choose a weapon before then. Ding! Your body has been restricted by a mysterious force. Yuan suddenly felt as though he had mountains strapped to his back, nearly forcing him to his knees. This place might be even more dangerous than the 9 Swords trial. Yuan swallowed nervously as beads of sweat continuously appeared on his face. A sword! He shouted a moment later. An ordinary sword appeared before Yuan the next second, yet it exuded the aura of a divine-grade treasure. The masked man also wielded an identical sword in his hands. 8. 9. 10. The masked man suddenly sprung into action and began clashing with Yuan. After a few exchanges with the masked man, Yuan realized something. The difficulty isn't my opponent. It's just the restriction on my body that's a problem. If it weren't for the restriction on his body, Yuan would have defeated the masked man in a single strike, but because the additional weight that was adjusted for him, even swinging his sword had become a difficult task that required all of his effort. If the first restriction is already this cruel, I cannot imagine what the other floors have in store for me. Yuan cried inwardly as he fought the masked man with sweat pouring from his pores. Chapter 1131 Sword Pagoda 4. I've never seen the young master struggle so much in a fight. His opponent is also weak in comparison, only being at the peak of Spirit King. He would normally defeat such opponents without batting an eye, yet he's been struggling for over 10 minutes now. Feng Yuxiang sighed out loud, breaking the silence. Lan Yingying shook her head. Can you blame him? His movements are sluggish and stiff, almost as though there's something weighing him down. Brother Yuan will defeat Pig Face soon. His movements have gotten much better compared to when he first began. He's rapidly adapting to the changes in his body. Xiao Hua mumbled. Also, he's not using any of his sword techniques. It's like he's treating this trial as a training ground. Lan Yingying said. That's the young master for you. Feng Yuxiang smiled. Indeed, Yuan was getting used to fighting with the restriction on his body. However, that isn't to say that things have gotten easier for him, as the restriction grew stronger as he got more used to it, almost as though it was growing with him. After another 10 minutes of non-stop clashing, Yuan finally managed to defeat the masked man without using any of his sword techniques. He could have used everything to defeat his opponent in an instant, but if he needed so much resources to pass the first floor, there was no way that he'd pass the later floors, hence why he restricted himself even more by not using any sword techniques. This also allowed him to familiarize with his situation. Congratulations on passing the first floor. What do you want for your reward? Spiritual energy or a heaven-grade treasure? Yuan didn't immediately respond, as he had no need for either of these rewards. His cultivation was stuck at peak Spirit King until he upgraded his physique, and he had no use for a heaven-grade treasure. What if I don't want either of these rewards? Yuan then asked. You can forfeit these rewards and receive an even greater reward on the next floor if you pass it. If you fail, the rewards on this floor will be forever gone. If you accept a reward on this floor, you can still choose the rewards on the second floor, but it won't be as good. Alright, I will forfeit these rewards. Yuan answered without even the slightest hesitation. Very well. I will now take you to the next floor. Yuan's vision flickered for a split second, and the man with the pig mask is now suddenly wearing a mask of a sheep's face. Welcome to the second floor. The trial will begin in a minute. The only thing Yuan could think about now was the second restriction. A minute later. Ding! Your body has been restricted by a mysterious force. Eh? Yuan looked down at his hand with wide eyes. The sensation of his sword had suddenly disappeared, but when he looked, the sword was still there. What's going on? Why can't I feel my sword? He wondered. The second restriction has blocked your sense of touch. You won't be able to feel anything except for pain. My sense of touch? Yuan now realized that even the sensation of the platform that he was standing on had disappeared, and it felt extremely awkward. One might think that losing your sense of touch isn't that bad, but without being able to tell when your foot touches the ground as quickly, it would instantly throw off one's balance and make movement techniques near impossible. This also affects how one wields and swings their weapon. What a pain in the ass. He sighed out loud. 10 seconds later, the masked man began his assault. Now that he's lost his sense of touch, Yuan's movements only became more awkward and unstable, and even the way he swung his sword looked different. If someone who did not know about the situation were to see him at this moment, they would think that he was drunk to the core. Yuan knew that it would be pointless to fight the masked man while in such an unstable condition, so he decided to spend as much time as he needed to get used to the restriction. After all, there was no restriction on how much time he had on each floor, so he could stay there for as long as he needed. 10 minutes, 20, 30. In the blink of an eye, over 3 hours have passed since Yuan entered the second trial. During this time, Yuan did not go on the offensive even once and remained defensive. Once he got used to his new restrictions and could perfectly calculate the moment his foot touches the ground for all of his movements, he started to work on his sword and how he swung it. In the end, it took him almost 4 hours to adapt, but once he did, he started going on the offense, defeating the masked man and clearing the second floor. Will you choose a reward this time, or will you forfeit it again? The choices remain the same: spiritual energy or a divine-grade treasure. Forfeit. Yuan responded instantly. Very well. I shall now transport you to the next floor. Meanwhile, Longchen was already on the fourth floor. Unlike Yuan, who hadn't used any sword techniques up to this point, Longchen blew away his opponents with his superior techniques from the first floor. Despite that, he was also struggling to defeat his opponents. After narrowly passing the fourth floor, Longchen fell to his knees and muttered in a low voice, "The person who created this place is such a sadistic bastard." Longchen was someone who wasn't used to feeling the ground with his knees. In fact, he doesn't even remember the last time he was brought to his knees. I am one of the 4 dragons. There's no way I am going to let some nobody from the third heaven defeat me. I am going to defeat the 7th floor and become the first person to clear the sword pagoda. Just you wait. Longchen gritted his teeth in frustration. He forfeited his rewards on the fourth floor and climbed to the fifth floor shortly after. Chapter 1132 Sword Pagoda 5. Look! Someone's managed to enter the fifth floor. The spectators were in awe after seeing a sword light appear on the fifth floor. There were currently 10 light sources shaped like a sword within the sword pagoda, each representing a challenger. There were 6 sword lights on the first floor, 2 on the second floor, 1 on the third, and 1 on the fifth floor. It must be that silver-haired man from the upper heavens. What if it's that Xiao Yang? Impossible. If you saw what I saw a few days ago at the Nine Swords trial, you wouldn't say that. Someone suddenly said. What did you see there? That Xiao Yang. He managed to survive all 9 sword strikes from the Nine Swords trial. In fact, he came here right after passing it. This person who had witnessed Yuan's greatness at the Nine Swords trial revealed this information to these people. What? Such information greatly shocked everyone there, as they were all aware of the Nine Swords trial. Are you sure you're not farting? There's no way someone could have defeated that gruesome trial. If you don't believe me, you can go check the Nine Swords trial. It's probably in ruins right now. He's not lying. I was also there to witness it. Someone else there said. Thus, the name Xiao Yang began spreading in the nameless emperor's tomb. Upon entering the third floor, Yuan was given another restriction. The already dim world suddenly turned pitch black, almost as though he'd entered the void. Yuan's body trembled as it instinctively knew what had just happened. The restriction on the third floor had removed his ability to see, turning him blind and causing his bad memories to resurface at the same time. However, Yuan didn't despair, as he wasn't completely blind. In fact, he could still see perfectly. This is thanks to his divine sense, which allows him to see things even better than what he could with his bare eyes. Yuan began fighting with the masked man who had a rooster mask shortly after. Since this floor's restriction was pretty much ineffective against him, it allowed him to fight at the same pace as the previous floor. This restriction that forces one to constantly use their divine sense may not affect Yuan, who essentially has unlimited soul strength due to his soul cultivation technique, but it was deadly to the others, who will inevitably exhaust themselves from constantly using their divine sense, forcing them to rush through each floor as fast as possible. 2 hours later, Yuan defeated the third floor. Will you choose a reward this time, or will you forfeit it again? You can choose between spiritual energy or 10 divine grade treasures. 10 divine grade treasures? Just how many treasures are in this place? Yuan wondered inwardly. I will forfeit my rewards. He spoke a moment later. I understand. Then I shall send you to the 4th floor. Waiting on the 4th floor was a figure with a goat mask. Your body has been restricted by a mysterious force. The very next second, Yuan lost all sensation in his left arm. So I can only use one arm now, huh? These restrictions are getting more ridiculous. He couldn't help but utter out loud. This is just the beginning, said the masked man before approaching Yuan with a movement technique. Although his cultivation remains at the peak of Spirit King, his movements are getting better, and he's also more aggressive than the previous guardians. Now that I only have one arm to fight with, I can no longer fight without any techniques. Fortunately, my dominant arm wasn't restricted. Vanishing Ghost's soundless blade. Due to the increased weight on his body and his crippled arm, he was unable to use his technique at full power. I can only exert about 20% of its power in my current state. Yuan sighed inwardly after seeing the effects. However, even at 20%, it was still quite effective against his enemy. Meanwhile, the people outside the sword pagoda watched as the sword light on the 5th floor disappeared. The door to the sword pagoda opened, and a silver-haired young man was sent flying out the next moment. Damn it! I was so close to defeating the 5th floor. Long Chen gritted his teeth in frustration. After cursing inwardly, Long Chen began sweeping the crowd with his divine sense in search for a certain individual. I don't see him. Is he still inside the sword pagoda? Longchen looked at the sword pagoda to see 5 people on the first floor, 3 on the second floor, and 1 person on the fourth floor. He turned to look at the group of people in the front and asked them, "Hey, did that Xiaoyang come out already?" They shook their heads. "No, you were the first to come out." "Then he's definitely on the fourth floor." Longchen narrowed his eyes at the light within the sword pagoda. After taking a deep breath, he spoke in a loud voice supported by his aura. "Starting this point forth, nobody will enter the sword pagoda until Xiaoyang comes out. I will slay anyone that dares to disobey." What? It was an unreasonable demand from Longchen, but nobody there could defy him. Who the hell do you think you? Some of the newer people there that didn't know Longchen wanted to fight back, but they were quickly stopped by the others. Don't mess with him. He's some big shot from the upper heavens, and he can kill you with just his aura alone. When the newer people learned this information, they immediately gave up on arguing and became silent. One of many unspoken rules in the 9 heavens is that one should never mess with someone from a higher realm, because messing with even a servant could result in one's entire family being slaughtered, much less a big shot like Longchen, who was exuding the aura of a young master from a powerful background. Thus, nobody else would enter the sword pagoda after Longchen came out. Eventually, everyone else besides Yuan were outside, leaving him alone inside. Chapter 1133 Sword Tablet. Fuck. What's taking him so long? He's been on the fourth floor for 2 hours now. The spectators were getting impatient, as most of them had only expected to wait at most another half an hour before Yuan got kicked out of the sword pagoda. Even Longchen couldn't help but wonder what was going on inside. What's he doing inside? The third floor forces one to use divine sense due to the restriction, so it wouldn't make sense to prolong the fights. Even if he's not using his divine sense, the Guardian should be attacking him relentlessly, giving him no time to rest. To spend so much time on one floor, there's no way he's getting past the fourth floor. After another hour of waiting, the sword light on the fourth floor finally moved to the fifth floor. This shocked everyone there. He actually managed to beat the fourth floor after spending 3 whole hours there? No way. Longchen, who knew very well about the restrictions, was even more baffled than the others. As someone who climbed to the 5th floor, he knew better than anyone there how unforgiving the sword pagoda was, and for Yuan to endure 3 hours on the 4th floor was nothing short of a miracle. What happened in there? I really want to see it. Longchen's hands curled up into fists. Oh. If it isn't the silver dragon. Why are you just standing out here? Aren't you going to challenge the sword pagoda? A voice that Longchen recognized suddenly resounded. He turned around to see a group of individuals approaching him from a distance. Of course, just like Longchen, they were all from the upper heavens. I already went inside, he said in a calm voice, trying his best to hide his emotions. Really? Then why are you still here? Wow. There's someone on the 5th floor. These people finally noticed the single light in the sword pagoda. Why is there only one person inside? One of them asked. Because I am not allowing anyone to step foot inside until that person comes out. Longchen said, and he continued, this includes you lot. You know who's inside the sword pagoda? I don't really know him since we've just met a few hours ago. Longchen shook his head. However, he's definitely talented. Unbelievable. Did the silver dragon just praise someone from this lowly place? I can't wait to tell the others about this. This is an unprecedented event. I doubt they'll even believe us. This group of people started laughing. Longchen sneered, you may mock him for his background, but none of you can compare to this person who came from the very background that you're currently laughing at. These people immediately stopped laughing after hearing such words. Hey, Silver Dragon, cut the crap. You really expect us to believe that someone from this dump is better than us? There's a limit to your lies even if you just want to mess with us. Longchen glared at the person who just spoke while emitting killing intent. Cut the crap? Who the hell do you think you're talking to, Mushun? If you think I won't dare to kill you because we're down here, you're sorely mistaken. This person known as Mushun trembled in fear. I apologize. I accidentally blurted out something disrespectful to you because of your outrageous claim that someone from third heaven could possibly match us. Outrageous, huh? Is it really that unbelievable? Longchen pointed at the sword pagoda before continuing. I failed on the 5th floor, so this person who also managed to step foot on the 5th floor is at least as talented as myself. Hell, I would be surprised even if half of you get past the 3rd floor, much less the 4th. Mushun gritted his teeth in anger after hearing such words, yet he couldn't refute it. Nobody there could, so they all remained silent. Meanwhile, Yuan was already fighting the Guardian on the 5th floor with a new restriction, which completely sealed his movement techniques. Although he could still move his legs just fine, he might as well be considered his legs to be useless since he was only able to move around with the increased weight by using his movement technique. Now that he couldn't use any movement techniques at all, he would have trouble taking even a single step. Clang! 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 Despite the new restriction, Yuan still somehow manages to stay on his feet and repel the Guardian's attacks with the God of War's astral arts. It was as though Yuan had turned into a mountain with arms. Thanks to the God of War's astral arts, he was able to attack the Guardian without moving around too much, and each of his strikes would send the Guardian flying backwards. However, the Guardian was also relentless in its assault. Every time he gets sent flying, he would run at Yuan again without any pauses. The two of them would continue this kind of clashing for many minutes until Yuan barely managed to overpower the Guardian, defeating him in one strike. Will you choose a reward this time, or will you forfeit it again? You can choose between a massive amount of spiritual energy or 3 ancient grade treasures. 3 ancient grade treasures. Yuan sighed inwardly as he refused the rewards. A few moments later, he was sent to the 6th floor. Congratulations, you are the first person to step foot on this floor. The masked man was now wearing a monkey's mask. The 6th floor is a little different compared to the other floors. You will now be given 7 days to study this sword tablet. A massive stone tablet shaped like a sword suddenly descended from the void, landing in front of Yuan. However, there were no words on this sword tablet, just multiple deep cuts that seemed to have been left behind by a sword. All of your restrictions will be temporarily removed. They will return after 7 days, and you will also receive your 6th restriction then. Good luck. The masked man disappeared afterward. Chapter 1134 Studying the Sword Tablet. Heavens! He's managed to reach the 6th floor. I believe this is an unprecedented event. The spectators outside the sword pagoda were in an uproar when they saw the light on the 6th floor. A look of disbelief appeared on Long Chen's face for a brief moment before his eyes flickered with a vicious flame of various emotions. Awe, jealousy, shock, inferiority, so many feelings that he hadn't felt in a very long or ever surfaced at once, overwhelming him and his pride. The others from the upper heavens were also feeling similar emotions. Are you sure he came from this dump? How do you know he's not lying to you? One of them doubted Long Chen's claim that Yuan was someone from the 3rd heaven. I would have recognized him if he came from the upper heavens. Long Chen gritted his teeth. He could have easily disguised himself. Unless he consumed a pill made by the god of alchemy himself, there's no way I wouldn't realize it. Despite saying these words, Long Chen himself was beginning to doubt whether Yuan had come from this 3rd heaven or not. He was wearing the golden dragon robe, after all. Now that I think about it, there's no way he can acquire something like that in this place, where the royal dragon clan doesn't exist. But it didn't seem like he was lying when he said that he didn't come from the upper heavens, so where in heaven's name did this guy come from? While the spectators were still trying to get over their shock, Yuan was sitting before the sword tablet, silently staring at the sword marks on it. This reminds me of the sword marks in the mystic realm. Yuan recalled the nameless temple within the mystic realm, where he also met Lan Yingying for the first time. Inside the temple was a tablet with sword marks, and he learned sword aura after studying the tablet. The sword marks on that sword tablet. Lan Yingying mumbled in a low voice as she found the sword marks to have a familiar feeling to them. Do you recognize the sword tablet? Feng Yuxiang asked her out of curiosity. Not the sword tablet, but the sword marks on it. Although the pattern is different, the marks are almost identical to the ones on the Lord's tablet. Lan Yingying proceeded to tell the others about her first meeting with Yuan and about the temple that she had spent the majority of her life taking care of. So it has something to do with sword aura, huh? I wonder what the young master is going to learn this time. Feng Yuxiang mumbled with an anticipating look on her face. Yuan would spend the next 24 hours staring at the sword marks without any breaks. Meanwhile, the people outside the sword pagoda were confused and filled with curiosity as to what was happening on the 6th floor, and the number of people outside had increased drastically once words began to spread. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime event, so people were rushing over to the sword pagoda. It's already been a full day since he entered the 6th floor. Just what is happening inside? This is the first time that someone has ever reached the 6th floor, so nobody can say for sure. Time passed quickly, and within the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed since Yuan entered the 6th floor. During the last 3 days, nothing significant has happened to Yuan. In fact, he was still trying to comprehend the sword marks. It's already been 3 days. Whatever secret is behind that sword tablet, it must be incredibly profound since it usually takes the young master no time to understand them. Feng Yuxiang sighed out loud. However, just as she finished her sentence, an explosive amount of sword aura suddenly gushed out of Yuan's body. What an immense amount of sword aura! Xiaohua mumbled in a dazed voice. Yuan's sword aura would only continue to intensify from that moment. On the 4th day, the sword aura around Yuan had become so dense that it could even be seen by one's bare eyes, and it took the shape of a sword, making it seem as though Yuan himself had turned into a sword. This is... Xiaohua's eyes flickered with excitement when she realized what was happening. What is it? Share your insight with the rest of us. Feng Yuxiang noticed this and said to her. Xiaohua sneered in a cute manner, silently refusing Feng Yuxiang's request. You little... Feng Yuxiang gritted her teeth in frustration, as she was really curious about Yuan's condition. Do you know anything? She turned to ask Lan Yingying, who was staring at Yuan with wide eyes. Lan Yingying shook her head. I have never seen anything like this before, but it feels familiar somehow. Meanwhile, there were now over 50,000 people surrounding the sword pagoda, all of them on the verge of insanity from the anticipation. Their curiosity piqued. Shit! What the hell is he doing in there? It's already been 4 days. Did he die inside or something? There's no way he's been fighting for the past 4 days. What do you think is really happening inside? Only time will tell. On the 5th day, Yuan finally closed his eyes and entered a state of trance. That's... Feng Yuxiang's eyebrows twitched upon seeing this familiar sight. He's experiencing enlightenment once again. Lan Yingying mumbled with a bittersweet smile on her face. Most people would be considered lucky if they experience enlightenment even once in their lifetime, yet Yuan has already experienced it multiple times within a year. Towards the end of the 6th day, Yuan opened his eyes to be greeted by a notification. You have learned Enhanced Sword Aura. Enhanced Sword Aura. Enhanced Sword Aura. Description: only those blessed by the Sword God could comprehend Enhanced Sword Aura. Allows you to convert your soul strength into Enhanced Sword Aura. Significantly increases sword damage and sharpness. Chapter 1135 Enhanced Sword Aura. After comprehending Enhanced Sword Aura, which is basically a superior version of Sword Aura that uses his soul strength instead of spiritual energy, Yuan's Sword Aura had reached peak masterly level, and his understanding for the swords also increased significantly. You have understood the basics of enhanced sword aura. Your understanding of swords has reached a new level. Your advanced sword mastery has developed into grand sword mastery. Congratulations! You have been awarded the title Grand Sword Master. Grand Sword Mastery. Description: very few sword masters have reached this level. Drastically improves your control with swords by 75% and increases all damage dealt with swords by 150%. Your enemies will feel more pain from your sword attacks as your damage increases. Your sword techniques will also have more impact. Requires no activation. Brother Yuan really did it. He's learned enhanced sword aura. Xiaohua muttered with a look of disbelief and awe on her face. What? Enhanced sword aura? Feng Yuxiang exclaimed with a terrified expression on her face. What's that? Lan Yingying asked with her head slightly tilted to the right. It's not surprising that you don't know about enhanced sword aura since that only exists in the upper heavens. Feng Yuxiang said, and she continued, anyways, enhanced sword aura is basically the next level of sword aura. It's incomparably stronger compared to sword aura and incredibly hard to learn at the same time. Xiaohua then spoke, even in a place like the Supreme Heaven, where the most talented people in the 9 heavens gather, anyone that can comprehend enhanced sword aura before they are 100 years old are considered peak prodigies. Brother Yuan isn't even 20 years old. It's that amazing. Lan Yingying turned to look at Yuan with a look of admiration on her face. There's a saying that if sword aura can cut mountains, then enhanced sword aura can split the world into 2 parts. The fact that it hasn't even been that long since he learned sword aura is even more terrifying. Feng Yuxiang's body trembled before Yuan's unfathomable talent. If he's just your ordinary genius, that is. Lan Yingying smiled. He's the Lord's reincarnate, after all. Something like this should only be natural. Feng Yuxiang then said, I don't know anything about this Lord, but if he can teach people enhanced sword aura just by leaving behind a few sword marks, I cannot even begin to imagine the level of swordsmanship he'd achieved in his past life. By the way, since there's enhanced sword aura after sword aura, I can assume that there is something even stronger than enhanced sword aura, right? Lan Yingying suddenly asked. Xiaohua nodded, yes, but the amount of people that have reached such a level is so minuscule that it might as well be non-existent. Shortly after Yuan learned enhanced sword aura, the masked figure returned. Congratulations on learning enhanced sword aura. Your restrictions will return soon with an additional restriction. Yuan couldn't wait for the challenge to begin, as he was itching to use his newfound powers. Your body has been restricted by a mysterious force. The following moment, Yuan's enthusiasm dropped to 0 when all of the spiritual energy inside his body suddenly disappeared. The 6th restriction is cultivation restriction. Your dantian and all of your spiritual energy has been sealed off, so you're no different than a mortal now. The masked man said to him. He was already partially crippled before this. Now that his cultivation is sealed, he has truly become a cripple. Yuan despaired for a second before suddenly recalling the description of enhanced sword aura. My spiritual energy may be sealed, but my soul strength is untouched, and enhanced sword aura uses soul strength. I still have a chance. If he hadn't learned enhanced sword aura, even all of the talents in the world wouldn't help him pass this challenge. When Yuan held the Empyrean Overlord, he could immediately tell how drastically different the sword felt in his grasp compared to before learning enhanced sword aura. Even though I don't have any spiritual energy, I feel like I can defeat any opponent with this sword in my grasp. Yuan's body began emitting enhanced sword aura, creating this weird effect in the air around him that made it seem like it was constantly being sliced by a sword. In fact, if one closed their eyes and tried to sense Yuan, they wouldn't even sense a human presence, but an entity, a sword. Yuan stared at the masked man with a tranquil expression. Even though he had no cultivation and his opponent was a peak spirit king, he didn't feel pressured in the slightest. The challenge began a few seconds later, and the masked man immediately rushed at Yuan while swinging his sword that was covered in sword aura. Almost as though he was only taking a stroll, Yuan casually took a step forward while swinging the Empyrean Overlord. Fush! An invisible blade of enhanced sword aura flew towards the masked man and clashed with his sword aura. The enhanced sword aura looked easy to dodge at glance, but when the target tried to dodge it, they immediately realized that escape was impossible, as the sharp pressure coming from it was strong enough to instill intense fear in their soul, making them feel as though they'd be cut into 1,000 pieces if they dared to move, so their bodies could only stiffen from shock and await its inevitable death. With a single strike, Yuan had cut down his opponent and defeated the Peak Spirit King without breaking a single sweat. Enhanced sword aura. How terrifying! Yuan mumbled as he stared at the Empyrean Overlord before showing a slight smile. Congratulations, you have defeated the 6th floor. Another masked man appeared before him. You are. Yuan narrowed his eyes at the masked man. Unlike the previous masked figures, this one didn't have any weird animal masks and looked more like the real Nameless Emperor. Let's have a proper conversation on the 7th floor. The masked man disappeared afterward. Chapter 1136 Weapon Upgrade. Will you choose a reward, or will you forfeit it again? You can choose between spiritual energy or a mythic-grade treasure. A voice tempted Yuan shortly after the masked man disappeared. Mythic-grade treasure. Yuan swallowed nervously. He would be lying if he said that he wasn't tempted. However, there was still one more floor in the Sword Pagoda. If he forfeits such a reward on this floor, he could only imagine what he'll acquire on the 7th floor. I will forfeit the rewards on this floor. He responded a moment later. Then I shall transport you to the 7th floor now. Yuan's body was suddenly enveloped in a warm light before he disappeared from the 6th floor, appearing on the 7th floor. Outside the Sword Pagoda, over 100,000 people have gathered to witness the spectacle of Yuan reaching the peak of the Sword Pagoda. Heavens! He's alive! And he passed the 6th floor. That bastard really did it. He's reached the peak of the Sword Pagoda. The people there were all in awe. The Sword Pagoda is one of the most popular and renowned trials in the Nameless Emperor's tomb, so most of the people there knew the difficulty and its history. A legend is about to be born. Long live Xiaoyang! Some people there even began revering Yuan, treating him as though he was a god. The group that came from the upper heavens were dead silent at this moment, but all of them were thinking about one thing with serious expressions, that they needed to recruit this person who seemingly has unlimited potential at all cost. Regardless if he passes the final floor or not, he's still going to become famous. Once the seniors in the upper heavens learn of his presence, they will all go crazy trying to recruit him. Longchen could feel his heart throbbing with excitement, as it has been a while since a genius at Yuan's level has appeared. Meanwhile, Yuan stood before the masked man on the 7th floor. Welcome to the peak of the Sword Pagoda. Are you my opponent for this floor? Yuan asked as he tightly gripped his Empyrean Overlord. The masked man shook his head. No, you won't be fighting me. This will be your opponent. The masked man took a step to the side, clearing the path and revealing the object behind him. Yuan raised an eyebrow when he saw what the masked man was referring to. There was a large boulder made of an unknown substance that resembled crystal, and there was a wooden sword stabbed into it. That's my opponent? What kind of joke is this? Yuan asked him. This isn't a joke. The condition to pass this floor is to pull out that wooden sword. As for your restriction, well, this test in itself is one. The rest of your restrictions will also be lifted. Good luck, not that it matters at all. Seriously. Yuan felt that it was a little anticlimactic, but he didn't complain. He quickly approached the wooden sword and wrapped his fingers around the handle. However, before he exerted any force, the masked man spoke. Oh, before you attempt to pull the sword, I should warn you that you will only have one chance. If you fail, your body will explode, and you will die. What? Yuan wanted to release the sword, but he subconsciously pulled his arms back without releasing his grip on the sword. Shah! The wooden sword was pulled out of the boulder without any resistance. Yuan stared at it with wide eyes. Ah ha ha! The masked man suddenly began laughing out loud, causing Yuan to raise an eyebrow. I was just joking. You wouldn't have died, and the wooden sword has no meaning. Explain. Yuan frowned slightly. The moment you comprehended enhanced sword aura from the 6th floor, you've already completed the sword pagoda. There is no challenge on the 7th floor. Then what's the point of making a 7th floor? The masked man snapped his fingers, causing a hole to appear in the middle of the room, and inside this hole was about 3 inches of black liquid. Lend me the Empyrean Overlord for a moment. The masked man then said. Yuan summoned the sword and handed it over. The masked man looked at the sword with a nostalgic feeling in his eyes. It's been a while, buddy. He then submerged the sword in the liquid. What are you doing? Yuan couldn't help but ask. How do you feel about the Empyrean Overlord? Is it a good weapon? Instead of answering his question, the masked man suddenly asked one. Well, despite it being my second soul weapon, it's my most used weapon, and I have the most experience with it. When I wield it in my hands, it feels as though it becomes part of my body. It's powerful and easy to use. I don't have any complaints. Is that so? What if I tell you that the Empyrean Overlord is actually still in a dormant state? That it's not at its full potential? Yuan's eyes widened with surprise upon hearing such information. The Empyrean Overlord was crafted by a good friend of mine. He used the best materials in the 9 heavens, and it took him over 10,000 years to complete it. It could even be considered the best sword in existence. However, its power would have been too potent for you to handle at the beginning, so I purposefully sealed its power until fate brought you here. Wait. You're making it sound like you knew I was going to acquire it from the beginning and that I would come here. Yuan frowned. The masked man lifted his mask a little, revealing his smile, of course. That's just how our lives work. Fate isn't as random as it seems, especially when it's our fate. The Empyrean Overlord, the Nameless Emperor's tomb, the Sword Pagoda. All of these things are connected. You didn't come here by chance. You were guided here. By whom? Yuan swallowed nervously. You'll figure it out yourself eventually. Anyways, the upgrade is done. The masked man retrieved the Empyrean Overlord from the hole the following moment. Chapter 1137 Awakened Empyrean Overlord. What do you think? The masked man handed the Empyrean Overlord that was emitting a totally different aura compared to moments ago back to Yuan. Yuan swallowed nervously before accepting the Empyrean Overlord. When he first acquired the Empyrean Overlord, there was always this feeling of it being incomplete to him, like it could be improved. It was a very minor feeling that didn't bother him, but it was there nonetheless. However, the moment he touched the upgraded Empyrean Overlord, he immediately realized why he had that feeling. He didn't think it was possible, but the Empyrean Overlord felt even more comfortable in his grasp, and there was even this sense of nostalgia from it. Don't be fooled by it. The masked man suddenly said. What do you mean? Yuan looked at him with a puzzled face. Its seal may have been released, but it's not fully awakened just yet. In order to fully awaken it, you'll need to feed it lots of spiritual energy. You can do that by killing magical beasts or other cultivators. Although it was blocked by his mask, there was a grim smile on his face as he spoke. Though, it's still more powerful than the previous Empyrean Overlord even in its current state. Yuan stared at the sword until a notification popped up. Awakened Empyrean Overlord. Rank, Soul Weapon. Growth rate, very slow. Awakening progress, 0%. A godlike weapon crafted by the god of refinement and wielded by the Sword Emperor. It possesses tremendous power that surpasses all logic. However, it has yet to reveal its true name, its true potential. Unique ability, Chi Devouring Blade. Chi Devouring Blade activately devours the chi of your targets after a successful hit. A beautiful sword, right? The masked man asked. Indeed. Yuan nodded. The Empyrean Overlord and I have experienced and surpassed countless tribulations together in the past. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I wouldn't have survived many situations if it weren't for her. Her? Yuan raised an eyebrow. Why would he address a sword in such a manner? Almost like it had a gender. The masked man smiled. About that. You will learn about it eventually. Why can't you just tell me now? Because that would ruin the surprise and fun. All of you are like this. Yuan sighed. What's the point of keeping secrets to yourself? The masked man shook his head. Although we all share the same soul, I wouldn't say that we're all the same individual. At one point in all of our lives, we had a different personality and lived different lives, so you can say that we're all unique in our own ways. Even if we eventually recover our memories and become nearly identical, it's not completely the same. There's a slight difference, and that difference, no matter how small, makes us unique. Yuan felt some weight lifted from his heart after hearing such words, as he was always worried about returning to his old self, that he had no personality of his own. Anyways, the sword pagoda will collapse soon now that it has been cleared. The masked man suddenly said as he began walking towards Yuan. Here, take this. The masked man handed a key to him. What's this key for? I also received one from the Seven Swords trial aid as he retrieved something from his pocket. Here, take this before you leave. The masked man handed him a golden key. I also got a key from the Nine Swords trial. Yuan mumbled. What does it do? Collect 9 keys and go to the core of the tomb. Some of the answers that you seek will be there. Yuan was bewildered. He didn't expect the masked man to actually give him a proper answer. Then, are there any specific trials that I must pass to receive these keys? Yes, there are, but there's no need to worry about it and just do whatever you want in here. You'll eventually find all of them, anyways. Are you saying this is the work of fate? However, before he could receive an answer, Yuan found himself teleported outside of the sword pagoda with Xiao Hua and the others returning to his body. Once Yuan was outside, he could immediately feel countless gazes staring at him, causing his body to naturally tense up. He looked around with a look of disbelief on his face, as there were tens of thousands of people there, and they were all staring at him with wide eyes. After a brief moment of silence, almost as though everyone there snapped out of their daze at the same time, they all began bombarding Yuan with questions. What happened on the 6th and 7th floor? Why did it take you a whole week to pass the 6th floor? What kind of rewards did you acquire? Did you pass the 7th floor? Why did the sword pagoda suddenly collapse? Shut up! A deafening voice filled with an intense pressure suddenly rippled, startling everyone there and forcing them to hold their breaths. A few seconds later, Yuan watched as a handsome silver-haired young man approached him with a group of new faces following behind him. I will keep this short since it would take too long if I said everything on my mind. Congratulations, Xiao Yang. Not only did you defeat me, but you've also become the first person in the 9 heavens to defeat the sword pagoda. As promised, I will now answer all of your questions. Longchen said to him with a defeated smile. However, Yuan didn't say anything and merely extended his hand, almost as though he was asking for something. Longchen chuckled when he saw this, as he immediately realized what Yuan wanted from him. He reached into his spatial ring and retrieved exactly 10 pebble-sized royal-grade spirit jade before placing them on Yuan's open palm. The spectators watched while salivating, as these 10 small royal-grade spirit jades were worth over 100 million spirit stones easily. Chapter 11:38 Silver Dragon. Thanks. Yuan said as he tossed the spirit jades into his spatial ring. Long Chen cleared his throat and spoke, "Now as for the questions you had for me. Yes, I am from the upper heavens. Specifically, the ninth heaven." The surrounding people gasped in shock when they heard this information. He's someone from the supreme heaven? No wonder why his aura is completely different. A real big shot. I'm so glad I risked my life to come to the Nameless Emperor's tomb this year. To think I'd see someone who came from the supreme heaven with my very eyes. While the spectators there mumbled to each other, Yuan remained relatively calm as he asked, "Oh? I didn't think someone from such a place would be interested in the Nameless Emperor's tomb. Surely, you're not here for the treasures?" Long Chen chuckled, "Of course not. The treasures here are as common as tableware in the supreme heaven. I can't tell you the exact reason why I am down here, but I am searching for a specific individual, but since we're essentially looking with a blindfold on, I decided to spend some time in this place. As expected, he's here to look for me." Yuan sighed inwardly. "I see. Then I won't bother you anymore. Good luck with your searches." Yuan was prepared to leave as soon as possible since nothing good will come out of staying around these people who were on a manhunt for him. "Wait a minute. How can you leave already? I still have so much to talk about." Long Chen quickly stopped him. "If you want to talk, we can do so another time. This place may mean nothing to you, but it means everything to me, and unfortunately, our time here is limited, so I won't entertain you anymore." "Such insolence! I can no longer ignore your arrogance. Who do you think you are talking to?" One of the individuals behind Long Chen suddenly shouted. Yuan glanced at this person and casually said, "Now that you mention it, I don't know. Care to enlighten me?" "This bastard." "Stop." Long Chen glared at this individual with a serious expression. "Ignore him, Xiao Yang. Once again, I am Long Chen, one of 4 dragons and phoenixes. Most people in the upper heavens call me Silver Dragon." "Silver Dragon? So you're a dragon?" Yuan asked, his interest piqued. Long Chen shook his head. "Silver Dragon is just a title one given to those who have been recognized as the most talented in our generation. Amongst the 4 dragons and phoenixes, only 3 of them are actually from the dragon clan. With that being said, I do have some dragon blood in me. In the supreme heaven, the surname Long is mostly reserved for those in the dragon clan, after all." "Oh? So you're a half-dragon?" Yuan asked with an intrigued look on his face. Hey. That's. The group behind suddenly had terrified looks on their faces when they heard the word half-dragon. Long Chen's eyebrows twitched as a reaction, but he remained calm. "Since you're not from the supreme heavens, I cannot blame you for not knowing, but most people who do not have pure blood would charge at you for using that term. They consider it derogatory. Is that so? I will keep that in mind, and I apologize if I offended you." Long Chen shook his head. "Anyways, I have had this question on my mind since I first saw you." His gaze lowered, staring at the golden dragon robe. "Which dragon clan do you belong to?" "I don't belong to any dragon clan." "What? Then where did you acquire that uniform? If it wasn't given to you by the dragon clan, I highly suggest you return it to them. If they learn that a human is walking around with the golden dragon robe, they'll hunt you down like a criminal on death row." Long Chen frowned. "Then you don't have to worry. It was definitely given to me by the Dragon Clan. Although we're friends, I wouldn't say that I belong to their clan," Yuan said, unaware of the significance behind his outfit. "Seriously. Which family would hand out the golden dragon robe to someone that isn't even part of the Dragon Clan? This will easily invoke the wrath of the other clans if they find out." Long Chen couldn't imagine something like this happening. After all, an ordinary family within the Dragon Clan wouldn't have something like the golden dragon robe, as only those with royal blood are allowed to possess the outfit. In the first place, there are no families with royal blood in the third heaven, so he couldn't have possibly gotten it from here. Is he lying about the fact that he didn't come from the upper heavens? Or is he lying about how he acquired the golden dragon robe? Longchen pondered with a serious expression on his face, hoping that it was the former reason. After a moment of silence, Longchen spoke, "If you don't mind, can you tell me the surname of the family that gave you that robe? I know I am asking a lot of questions, but this is for your own good." Yuan nodded and responded calmly, "Their surname is Shi. The Shi family? Impossible." Longchen cried out loud after hearing this unexpected information. Yuan raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why do you look like you just saw a ghost?" Before I answer your question, allow me to confirm what I just heard. The family that gave you the golden dragon robe is the Shi family? Yuan silently nodded. Longchen fell silent again. Are you going to tell me that they don't exist or something? Yuan asked. No. There definitely exists a Shi family with royal blood within the dragon clan. However, they have been missing for thousands of years now. Are you sure it's the Shi family? Shi Shengma. Yuan suddenly uttered the name of the dragon emperor. Longchen's eyes immediately lit up after hearing this familiar name. That's the Shi family's dragon emperor's name. However, that isn't solid proof that he really met with them. Can you tell me where the Shi family is right now? He then asked. Chapter 1139, heading towards the Sword Temple. Sorry, but I cannot tell you their location. Although you say they're missing, they separated themselves from the rest of the world on their own accord, and they're living happily from what I saw. Yuan refused Longchen's request without hesitation. They separated themselves? Why would they? Longchen halted his mumble when he suddenly recalled the Shi family's history. The Shi family disappeared shortly after the Dragon Clan's war with cultivators many centuries ago. I guess they didn't want to deal with humans after what happened. He sighed inwardly. But this only created more questions for Longchen. Why would the Shi family that despises humans give a human the golden dragon robe? This doesn't make sense no matter how I think about it. Anyways, I have entertained you for long enough. If you have more questions, save them for after we all leave this place. Yuan turned around and began walking away. How about I come with you? Longchen started following him. He still had many questions and wanted to recruit Yuan to his side, after all. However, Yuan quickly turned around and held his arms up, pointing his palm directly at Longchen's face. Please leave me alone. I already have enough company with me. Longchen halted his steps and no longer followed Yuan. Yuan quickly escaped the crowd. There's too much attention on me. I will meet you guys a few miles ahead. Yuan notified the Tian family through divine sense as he flew away. I've never seen such an arrogant bastard before. He thinks he's above us just because he got lucky in the Sword Pagoda. I doubt he's actually that talented. The people behind Longchen gritted their teeth in anger. How could someone from a backwater place like the Third Heaven possibly have more talent than us? He must have used some trick to beat the Sword Pagoda. Longchen couldn't even be bothered by these people and merely remained silent, his eyes staring at the direction that Yuan disappeared to. Xiao Yang. What a mysterious fellow. Longchen realized at this moment that he's never been intrigued by another individual to such an extent. Longchen left the place shortly after, and when that happened, the other people at the Sword Pagoda went into an uproar. The Sword Pagoda has collapsed. What should we do now? I don't think there is anything we can do now. Heavens! He defeated not only the Nine Swords trial but also the Sword Pagoda. A legend is about to be born. I must let the others know. The name Xiao Yang began spreading within the Nameless Emperor's tomb like a wildfire during a heat wave. When the big families and powerful sects heard of Xiao Yang and his feats, they immediately decided to recruit him to their side. We must find this Xiao Yang before the others and recruit him to our sect. A famous sect leader roared at his disciples. My daughter! I want you to meet with this Xiao Yang and bring him to our family at all cost. A renowned patriarch said to his precious daughter with an urgent expression. But father, you already engaged me to the Ming family. Screw the Ming family. This Xiao Yang takes priority. If the rumors are true, he'll definitely become a prominent figure in not just the third heaven but the entire 9 heavens. Some people in the nameless emperor's tomb shifted their attention to Yuan after hearing his achievements, treating him as though he was another treasure in the tomb that must be acquired. However, since the rumors sounded too good to be true, most people doubted it and decided to ignore it. Meanwhile, a dozen miles away from the Sword Pagoda, Yuan regrouped with Tian Yenyu and Tian Suyin. You really dropped a lot of jaws back there, mine included. Tian Yenyu said as she stared at Yuan, still with a somewhat dazed look on her face. Tian Suyin remained quiet, her thoughts unknown. Tian Yenyu continued, I've been dying to ask you what happened on the 6th floor. Why did it take you almost a week to pass it when the 7th floor didn't even last an hour? Oh, I was given a week to comprehend something. That's all. That's it? Although it's very different from the previous floors, it sounds boring. What about the 7th floor? What did it look like up there? Same as the other floor, empty and boring. What about the reward? You cleared the Sword Pagoda, right? Surely, the reward must be extravagant. Tian Yenyu's eyes were essentially glowing from excitement at this moment. Yuan shook his head, besides this key, I didn't really receive much. Seriously. Tian Yenyu was baffled after hearing this, and she looked like a child who just had her dreams crushed. Didn't you also receive a key at the 9 Swords trial? What does it do? Tian Suyin looked at the key with interest. Her instincts told her that the key would lead to something special. Indeed, but I don't know its purpose. I only know that I have to collect 7 more before heading to the deepest parts of the tomb. That's impossible even for you. Not even half of the tomb has been explored since it was discovered, yet you want to go to the deepest area? You'll just be walking to your own grave. Yuan smiled, I think I will be fine. After all, fate brought me here. Fate? What a lunatic. Tian Suyin shook her head inwardly. Anyways, my next destination is the Sword Temple. Yuan announced a moment later. The Sword Temple is located at the border of the outer area. It'll take us 2 weeks just to get there even if we traveled there in a straight line without rest. Tian Suyin said. Yuan nodded, you don't need to follow me there if you don't want to. I don't want to waste your time, either. Nonsense. We've already come this far, it would only be a waste if we stop here. And I'm sure that we'll get to witness something jaw-dropping again, so I won't leave even if you force me. Tian Yenyu quickly said. Yuan showed a defeated smile, all right, I won't stop you. They resumed their journey shortly after. Chapter 1140 Renowned. Plus 20 fame. Plus 31 fame. Plus 56 fame. Plus 111 fame. Yuan noticed that his fame was increasing at a rapid rate as he traveled to the Sword Temple. This must be due to what happened at the 9 Swords trial and the Sword Pagoda. While he was glad to see his fame increasing, he still had no idea what kind of effect it had on him. And in just a few days, his fame reached over 100,000. Suddenly, an announcement appeared in the sky for all players to witness. Player Yuan's fame has spread far and wide, becoming the first player to receive 100,000 fame. Ding! You have received the title Renowned for your achievement. Certain events and areas have been unlocked due to your fame. Yuan's eyebrows lifted slightly after seeing the notifications. So fame unlocks new events. Now the only question is, where do I find these events? He wondered inwardly. Xiao Yang, let's take a break. Tian Yanyu suddenly turned to look at him. All right. He nodded. They stopped flying and started to look for an area where they could sit down to recover their depleted spiritual energy after flying for days without a break. Sometime later, they sat below a large tree. Tian Yanyu and Tian Suyin immediately closed their eyes and began to cultivate. I should have a few hours. Yuan stared at them for a moment before silently logging off the game for the first time since he entered the Nameless Emperor's tomb. She's still inside, huh? Yuan thought to himself as he looked at Chulio Xiang, who was laying beside him with her console on her head. He went to the bathroom and cleaned himself even though his body was sparking clean despite many weeks of not washing. After coming out of the bathroom feeling refreshed, Yuan left the room to check up on the others, and as usual, they could be found at the training ground behind the house, but there was only one person there. Yuan, what are you doing here? Have you already finished exploring the Nameless Emperor's tomb? Wang Ming spoke as he stopped swinging his sword, pleasantly surprised to see him at the training field. Yuan shook his head. No, not even close. I'm just taking a small break to stretch my body. Where are the others? They're all in cultivation online, that's all we do after morning training nowadays. I'm staying here later than usual since I feel like having a breakthrough soon. As for your girlfriends in Jinsei, they only show up once a week to exercise. Meishio appears a little more often to cook for us, but that has stopped since we told her to focus on her cultivation. The place has been really quiet as of lately with everyone focusing on their own things. Yuan nodded. That's good. And since I am already here, want to have a little spar? Wang Ming smiled. I would have asked you if you didn't. Yuan grabbed a sword and started sparring with Wang Ming shortly after. Sometime later. You've improved a lot since our last spar. Yuan said to Wang Ming, who was lying on the floor while soaked in sweat. Yet I still cannot land a single hit on you. Yuan chuckled. You'll get there, but I won't make it easy. That's exactly what I want. Yuan chatted with Wang Ming for a little longer before he returned to his room. However, he still had plenty of time left, and he didn't want to return to cultivation online so quickly. Thus, he decided to play with the zither. After grabbing his zither from the closet, Yuan went to the balcony and began playing it. About an hour later, Meishio removed the console from her head and sat up on her bed to look at the clock. It's almost midnight. Her ears suddenly twitched when it heard a heavenly melody being played, which stimulated her body and instantly woke her up. This music. Yuan? She quickly went to the balcony before looking towards Yuan's room, and her eyes were immediately blessed by Yuan's handsome face that was enhanced by the moonlight as he played the zither elegantly. Meishio opened her mouth slightly only to close it without uttering a sound, as she did not want to disturb such a moment. A minute later, after playing the final note, Yuan rested his hand on the zither before turning to look at Meishio with a gentle smile on his face. Hey, it's been a while. Did something happen in cultivation online? Meishio couldn't help but ask the first thing in her mind. Everything is fine in cultivation online, I'm just taking a break. I see. Meishio didn't know what else to say. After a moment of awkward silence, Meishio subconsciously uttered, Want to come over? By the time she realized what she just said, Yuan already responded with a silent nod. I will be there in a minute. Let me put away the zither first. Once Yuan left the balcony, Meishio's face flushed with redness. A minute later, Yuan knocked on Meishio's door. Meishio quickly answered. Once they were inside the room, Yuan sat down and initiated the conversation. How is your cultivation going? Smoothly. I just entered the 7th level of Spirit Master before logging out. You're a Spirit Master already? It's only been a month. I guess this is what happens when you focus on cultivation. Yuan smiled. She nodded. The dense spiritual energy in the 3rd heaven helps a lot. Of course, my cultivation technique plays the biggest role in my growth. I'm not the only one. Xu Liuxiang and Li Jinsi have also reached Spirit Master. Xu Liuxiang reached the 5th level last week. Though, the one with the most improvement is Li Jinsi. Even though she started much later than us, she has already surpassed us, reaching the 9th level. I think she'll become a Spirit Grandmaster soon. Li Jinsi is already at such a level? As expected of the number 1 genius in the Jaded Garden. She's really talented. Yuan was pleasantly surprised by Li Jinsi's immense growth. What about you? How are things in the Nameless Emperor's tomb? Meishio then asked. A lot has happened. Yuan proceeded to recall his experience to her. Chapter 1141 Burst of Bloodlust. And that's when I decided to take a break from cultivation online. Yuan recalled everything he'd experienced within the Nameless Emperor's tomb to Meishio, who listened with an intrigued expression on her face. However, after Yuan finished his story, the place became dead silent, as neither had anything else to say. The two of them proceeded to silently stare at each other for the next few moments. As it has been some time since they last saw each other, and it being the longest that they have been away from each other for a long time, things felt a little awkward between them. Meishio. Yuan uttered in a low voice, trying to start a conversation. Yuan. Meishio misunderstood his intentions and actually kissed him instead. Yuan didn't complain and closed his eyes, quietly enjoying the soft sensation of her lips. A few moments later, as her body started heating up with passion, Meishio began removing her clothes while she continued to kiss Yuan. Yuan did the same, and within seconds, they were both lying on the bed naked. I've missed this warmth. Meishio mumbled in a low voice. Yeah, me too. Yuan smiled. They would connect their bodies shortly after, and they would go on to spend the rest of the night cultivating with each other. Naturally, Yuan completely forgot about cultivation online, and it wasn't until the following morning did he recall about the Nameless Emperor's tomb. I'm going to take a bath. Want to come with me? Meishio asked him after their passionate session. Sure. Oh. I completely forgot. What? Meishio looked at him with a puzzled face. I have been gone for too long. Tian Yenyu will be puzzled when she finishes her cultivation and I am nowhere to be seen. I'm going to take a quick shower and immediately return to cultivation online. Sorry, Meishio. Yuan quickly rushed into the bathroom as he spoke. Don't worry about it. I am already lucky enough to see you during your brief break. Xu Liuxiang will definitely be upset to know that she'd missed you. Meishio chuckled. After a quick shower, Yuan rushed back to his room and logged back into cultivation online. When he returned to the Nameless Emperor's tomb, Yuan immediately noticed that neither Tian Yenyu or Tian Suyin was there. In fact, the tree that they had been cultivating under was gone as well. What the hell happened here? Yuan exclaimed in a shocked voice after seeing the scenery around him. The ground around him was split, and it looked like a massive battle had just occurred in this area. Do you guys know what happened here? Where is the Tian family? Yuan asked his servants. Unfortunately, they did not know. Sorry, young master, but we didn't see anything. When you disappeared, our senses were blocked, and we couldn't leave your body either. Feng Yuxiang said to him. Damn! I should have left them behind to watch over the Tian family. I've screwed up. Yuan cursed inwardly, blaming himself for this situation. Yuan, use your divine sense and see if you can sense them. Lan Yingying suddenly suggested. Your soul strength is much more powerful than ours, so you will be able to see further than us. Right. Yuan immediately activated his divine sense to the maximum. I found them. He quickly found them with divinesense.com. They're 25 miles north, and they're currently fighting a group of people. He could see Tian Yenyu and Tian Suyin currently being surrounded by a group of unknown cultivators that clearly had bad intentions, and Tian Suyin even appeared to be injured. Without hesitation, Yuan immediately began flying towards their direction, his aura filled with killing intent. Please let me make it in time, he prayed as he flew. Meanwhile, Tian Yenyu and Tian Suyin stood together with their backs facing each other. Mother, are you okay? Tian Yenyu exclaimed in a panicked manner when she noticed blood flowing down Tian Suyin's right arm. I'm fine. Worry about yourself, Tian Suyin said while gritting her teeth. Tian Yenyu turned to look at the cultivators attacking them and shouted, Who are you guys? We are disciples of the Jade Sword Manor. Why are you attacking us? Two beautiful ladies traveling by themselves inside the nameless emperor's tomb, you're asking to be attacked. Ah ha ha ha. One of the cultivators laughed out loud. These cultivators were all wearing unique outfits, suggesting that they might not belong to any sect. Are you all rogue cultivators? You'll regret attacking us once our friend returns. Tian Yenyu roared. Your friend? Oh, I'm so scared. Ha ha ha. Nobody is coming to save you. Just give up and stop resisting. If you do, we'll make this painless less painful for you. Save your breath, Yenyu. Tian Suyin said to her using divine sense, Listen to me. I am going to attract their attention. When that happens, I want you to run away. What? I'm not going to leave you behind, even if I am going to die. Tian Yenyu immediately refused. This is not the time to be stubborn. Tian Suyin roared back. Alright, enough bullshit. Let's just get this over with before we're interrupted. One of the rogue cultivators suddenly said. I call dibs on the mother. The young one's mine. It's first come first serve. Tian Yenyu and Tian Suyin watched as 8 spirit lords rushed at them with vulgar faces. A burst of bloodlust suddenly erupted not far away, sweeping the place with a chilling ripple. This instantly halted not just the rogue cultivators but also Tian Yenyu and her mother's movements. Their initial thought was that they'd somehow attracted the attention of a ferocious magical beast. However, before they could even think, one of the rogue cultivators suddenly shouted out in pain before he collapsed on the ground. The others turned to look at him with baffled expressions, and they could see a large hole had somehow appeared in the center of his face. Yan Yu. Senior. Yuan's voice resounded a moment later. Tian Yenyu instantly turned to face the direction of his voice with a blissful look on her face. Xiao Yang. Chapter 1142 Massive Magical Beast. Mother, let's go. Tian Yenyu immediately began running towards Yuan the moment she saw him, and she grabbed Tian Suyin's arm before pulling her along. The rogue cultivators were still in shock from their companion's sudden death, so they couldn't react in time and allowed the two of them to escape. We'll talk after I take care of the trash, Yuan said to Tian Yenyu as he withdrew the Empyrean Overlord. Almost as though it was responding to Yuan's emotions, the Empyrean Overlord's aura gushed like water at the bottom of a waterfall. Wait. The rogue cultivators subconsciously raised their hands to surrender. They could tell that Yuan was a spirit king and that nobody there would be able to defeat him even if they all fought together. However, Yuan wasn't interested in sparring these cultivators and swung the Empyrean Overlord without hesitation. A powerful sword light strengthened by enhanced sword chi immediately flew towards the cultivators. Everything happened so fast that the rogue cultivators couldn't even escape if they wanted, so they had no choice but to try and block the attack. Unfortunately for them, their techniques were all destroyed as soon as they were deployed. Nothing could stop the sword light from killing these cultivators today. Sha! The following moment, the cultivators dropped dead on the ground with their bodies severed in half, their spiritual energy absorbed by the Empyrean Overlord. Awakening progress, 10.01%. Killing 8 Spirit Lord cultivators was only enough to increase the progress by 0.01%. As for the 10%, it actually came from the Sword Pagoda, unbeknownst to Yuan at the time. Besides the Empyrean Overlord's awakening, the Sword Pagoda rewarded Yuan with all of the spiritual energy he'd gathered from each floor, but since his body couldn't absorb them, it was absorbed by the Empyrean Overlord instead. Yuan ran back to Tian Yenyu and her mother after dealing with the rogue cultivators. "Senior, you're hurt." Yuan quickly retrieved a pill for her injuries. "Here, take this." "I'm fine." "Where the hell did you go, anyway?" Tian Suyin said as she accepted the pill. "Sorry, I decided to look around while you guys cultivated. I shouldn't have left you guys alone. This is all my fault." "Nonsense. Those rogue cultivators were 100% at fault there. Don't kick yourself for their actions, Xiao Yang. And thank you for saving us. I don't even want to imagine what could have happened if you didn't come in time." Tian Yenyu shivered just thinking about it. "Anyways, I'm just glad that nothing serious happened to you. I won't leave you two alone anymore. I promise." "Good, because I am going to cultivate again to recover my exhausted spiritual energy," Tian Suyin said as she sat cross-legged on the ground. She'd used almost all of her spiritual energy to fight off the rogue cultivators, after all. "Me too." Tian Yenyu also sat down and began cultivating. This time, Yuan stood guard for them while scanning the area with his divine sense until they were done. "Sorry for the wait." Tian Yenyu finished a little faster than her mother since she had a lower cultivation base, thus less spiritual energy to restore. Tian Suyin opened her eyes 2 hours later. Once they were prepared, they resumed their journey towards the Sword Temple. "What? Yuan was just awake?" Shuliu Xiang came out of her room literally 10 minutes after Yuan returned to Cultivation Online. Please visit .m. "Yes." Meishio nodded, and she recalled Yuan's experience for her. "I can't believe I just missed him. If only I had managed to break through a few minutes earlier." She sighed out loud. "You had a breakthrough? Congratulations," Meishio said. And she continued, "But even if you came out in time to see Yuan, he wouldn't have any time since he had to rush back into Cultivation Online." Shuliu Xiang narrowed her eyes at Meishio in a suspicious manner. "You seem happy, a lot more happy than the last time I saw you. I bet you had a lot of fun with him today." Meishio chuckled. "Indeed, I did the whole night." Shuliu Xiang sucked her teeth. "Well, aren't you lucky? Did he say when he'll take a break again?" she then asked. "No, but he did say that he will try to take breaks as often as possible." "That's good to hear." A week later. There's something happening up ahead." Yuan suddenly warned the others. "What do you see?" Tian Yenyu asked. "There's a large group of cultivators currently engaged in a fight with this massive magical beast." "Should we go around them?" Tian Suyin's eyes flickered with a profound light after hearing this. "No. That magical beast is an event. If we defeat it, we'll be rewarded." "Are you sure?" "There are already people fighting it. If we enter now and steal their kill, they'll probably come after us," Tian Yenyu said. "There's no need to worry. Inside the Nameless Emperor's tomb, magical beasts are free for all, so it doesn't matter who is first to fight it. If they cannot kill the magical beast and someone comes along to take it from them, they can only blame themselves for not being able to defeat it fast enough." "Is that so?" Yuan mumbled. If he had to be honest, he had this urge to fight this magical beast the moment he laid eyes on it, and Tian Suyin's words only convinced him to do so. "Alright, I'm going to take care of this magical beast real fast and see what kind of reward I'll get from it. The two of you should stay far away just in case they attack me afterwards," he said to them a moment later. "I understand." Tian Yenyu nodded. A few minutes later, Yuan could see the magical beast's massive figure in the distance. Tian Yenyu gasped in shock when she saw it. "Heavens! Tian Suyin was just as surprised. I have seen plenty of magical beasts before in this place, but none of them could compare to this beast's size. Chapter 1143 Massive Magical Beast, 2. This magical beast in the distance was as tall as a mountain, literally. It stood on all four like a horse, had purple and silver scales, and it had a dragon's head. Furthermore, there was this long, black horn on its forehead, and it was currently shooting out purple lightning from it. This purple lightning scattered aimlessly, burning anything that it touched. The cultivators that couldn't dodge it immediately became burnt toast. What kind of monster is that? Tian Yenyu exclaimed in a startled voice after seeing the massive magical beast. That's a purple lightning qilin. They're actually a lot smaller in the real world. Tian Suyin responded, her tone sounding a little stiff. The two of you should stay here. I will kill it quickly and come right back. Yuan said to them. Okay. Be careful. Tian Yenyu nodded without hesitation. The last thing she wanted to do was to get any closer to that lightning-spewing monster. His monstrous body will just restore any damage inflicted to him. I bet he's actually immortal. Tian Suyin joked in a serious manner. Then I will be right back. Yuan waved at them before flying towards the purple lightning qilin that was running rampage in the distance. Watch out. It's going to shoot out lightning again. The cultivators fighting the purple lightning qilin were from different places. Some were disciples of a sect while others were members of a large family. Of course, there were rogue cultivators amongst the fighters, but they were mostly fighting alone without anyone watching their backs. Ah! Fuck! My leg! The bastards got my fucking leg! A disciple screamed in agony as he lost one of his legs to the purple lightning qilin's lightning, burning it to a crisp. Aim for its horn. If we destroy the horn, it should stop using its lightning attack. Another shouted. As Yuan got closer to the battlefield, he could witness with his bare eyes the carnage, where rivers of blood and mountains of corpses littered the ground around the purple lightning qilin. There has to be hundreds of corpses down there. He thought to himself, feeling shivers down his back. Once he was close enough, Yuan retrieved the Empyrean Overlord. However, he did not immediately enter the battlefield and patiently waited for his chance to strike. He also studied the purple lightning qilin's movements. Of course, people continued to die as time passed. As unfortunate as their deaths were, Yuan wasn't going to risk his own life to save these people like some sort of hero. These cultivators entered the nameless emperor's tomb with the resolve to die, and they did the same before they decided to fight this beast. About 10 minutes later, once Yuan was confident that he knew all of the purple lightning qilin's movements, he tightly held onto the Empyrean Overlord before flying towards it. The lightning attack may seem random at first, but it's not. It won't use it again for another 3 minutes, so this is my chance. Yuan appeared directly in front of the purple lightning qilin the next moment, and his body released an aura that surmounted the massive beast before him. His Empyrean Overlord also gushed with enhanced sword chi. This is going to be my first time using enhanced sword chi at its full power. After taking a deep breath, Yuan swung the Empyrean Overlord at the purple lightning qilin's horn. Sha.com. The black horn that threatened and killed hundreds of cultivators had been sliced off the monster's head cleanly. The cultivators there were in disbelief at first, but they quickly became overwhelmed with relief after realizing that they no longer have to worry about the lightning strikes. However, before anybody could celebrate, the purple lightning qilin released a loud roar, causing its scales to turn crimson. Its eyes also turned bloodshot with red lightning sparking from within, and its body also started shooting out tiny red sparks that coiled all around its body, creating what appeared to be an armor made of lightning. A sense of dread suddenly assaulted Yuan, and his body instinctively moved. Boom! A massive red lightning strike suddenly descended from the sky, hitting directly where Yuan was flying. Arg! Yuan released a pained voice before slamming his mouth shut when the sudden thunder managed to strike his left shoulder, tearing his entire arm. However, this could be considered lucky for him. If he hadn't sensed the danger and moved in advance, the thunder strike would have struck his head, instantly killing him. The purple lightning Qilin released another deafening cry, causing more red thunder strikes to rain down. Fuck! It's enraged. Run for your lives. The cultivators scattered like ants when they saw the apocalyptic-like scene before them. Xiao Yang. Tian Yinyu was terrified for his life when she saw the situation from afar. In fact, she had to distance herself even further as the area of the lightning strikes appeared to be growing with every passing moment. I need to finish this as soon as possible or it'll just get worse. Yuan thought to himself as he dodged the lightning strikes left and right while he waited for his injury to recover. However, with the purple lightning Qilin spamming lightning strikes non-stop, it would be incredibly hard to attack while dodging even if he was uninjured. Suddenly, a ball of flames shot out from his chest and flew directly at the purple lightning Qilin, engulfing its body in phoenix flames. I cannot sit back and watch it hurt you any longer, young master. Feng Yuxiang's voice resounded. Then, a ball of white flames appeared, mixing itself with the phoenix flame, causing the intensity of the flames to skyrocket. The purple lightning Qilin stopped rampaging and began jumping everywhere trying to extinguish the flames, but alas, its efforts were futile, and the flames of two divine beasts only became stronger. Thank you, you too. Yuan immediately took this chance to attack the monster. God of War's astral arts. After summoning his avatar, Yuan swung his sword at the purple lightning Qilin again, this time aiming right at the center of its body. Whoosh! The sword penetrated the scales with ease before cutting into its muscles, splitting its body into halves. Chapter 1144 Sword Temple. After the purple lightning Qilin was slain by Yuan, its body immediately began decomposing at a rapid rate until there was nothing but a single item on the ground, a purple key. Yuan picked up the key and thought to himself, is this what he meant when he said that I'd eventually find them no matter what? Is this a work of fate, or is this the tomb's doing? Brother Yuan, that wasn't a purple lightning Qilin. It was an ancient lightning Qilin, something that only exists in the seventh heaven and above. Even top cultivators in that realm have trouble dealing with it. Xiao Hua's voice suddenly resounded. Have you encountered one before? Yuan couldn't help but ask her. Xiao Hua isn't sure, she said. How are you not sure? Feng Yuxiang then asked. After a moment of silence, she spoke, Xiao Hua's memories have been hazy lately. Memories that I don't recall have been appearing in my mind since we arrived in the third heaven. That is interesting. Yuan mumbled. If I recall correctly, all exiles have restrictions placed on them to make their climb to the upper heaven as hard as possible, such as their strength. Does this mean Xiao Hua's memories have been restricted and such restriction is weakening as we move towards the upper heavens? Feng Yuxiang theorized. That does sound plausible. What do you think, Xiao Hua? Yuan found such a hypothesis entirely possible. Xiao Hua also thinks it's possible. This will also explain why my cultivation suddenly increased when we arrived in the second heaven and the third heaven. She agreed. If that's true, I wonder how strong you truly are, Xiao Hua. Yuan smiled. Xiao Hua blushed inwardly. Yuan returned to Tian Yenyu and Tian Suyin shortly after. Are you okay, Xiao Yang? It looked painful when you were struck by the purple lightning Qilin's red lightning. Tian Yenyu looked at him with a worried face even though he looked perfectly fine. It was indeed a little painful, but it's not unbearable, he said. What did you receive from the purple lightning Qilin? Surely, it was an amazing reward. Tian Suyin was more interested in the reward. Yuan showed her the purple key and silently smiled. That's it. Tian Suyin was dumbfounded. He nodded. No way. These keys better lead to something heaven-defying for them to be considered as a reward. Hopefully. Anyways, let's continue with our journey. The three of them returned to the air shortly after and started flying towards the Sword Temple again. A week later. Is that the Sword Temple? Tian Yenyu mumbled as a white building appeared on the horizon. It is. Tian Suyin confirmed. It's a lot more ordinary than I expected. The building itself was impressively large, but besides the beautifully detailed design exterior, everything was plain white. However, that was not what Yuan saw. While the others may only see an oversized white building, Yuan could see and sense that the entire building was overflowing with enhanced sword aura, so much so that it sent shivers down his back. Once he was close enough, Yuan could see a large group of cultivators standing around a tall platform in front of the Sword Temple, where two individuals were engaged in an intense match. So that's the sword trial. Yuan thought to himself when he saw it. This was something he'd read about in Jade Sword Manor's library. In order to enter the Sword Temple, one must participate in the sword trial and defeat their opponent first. The opponent is different for everyone depending on their strength and talents. If one fails to pass the sword trial, they will be denied entry to the Sword Temple, and everyone only has one attempt. According to the statistics, less than 1% of challengers have actually stepped foot inside the Sword Temple, and hundreds of thousands of cultivators participate in the sword trial every time the tomb opens. Tian Suyin said as they watched the sword trial from afar. The summoned spirits always have the same cultivation as the challenger, but their techniques are usually far superior. The opponents summoned by the sword trial are also addressed as spirits by most people. He lost already? It hasn't even been 2 minutes since the fight started. Tian Yenyu mumbled after the challenger was sent flying off the stage with one less arm that he entered the stage with. You'd have to be a genius to last more than 5 minutes against the spirits. That's how powerful they are. Tian Suyin said. The more I witness the Nameless Emperor's tomb, the more it feels like the odds are stacked against us. Just what kind of talent is the creator of this world looking for? Surely, they didn't make it just to mess with us, right? Tian Yenyu sighed. The vast majority of cultivators create a tomb to pass down their legacy to someone worthy, but the Nameless Emperor's tomb is so difficult that it feels like the creator made it just to mock the challengers. Sorry. Yuan couldn't help but apologize to her inwardly, as this tomb was clearly created solely for him. Sometime later, they made their way towards the stage before splitting up again. Yuan went to the back of the line for challengers while Tian Yenyu and her mother went to stand with the spectators. A few hours later. Look at that young man in the center of the line. Isn't that Xiaoyan? A few people who'd just arrived after coming from the Sword Pagoda quickly noticed him. You're right. It's him. You mean the genius who cleared the Sword Pagoda? That's him? He looks so young. An uproar within the spectators quickly ensued, and it didn't take long before everyone was talking about him. However, the conversation didn't last long, as everyone had their breaths taken away by a group of newcomers. More specifically, a group of beautiful ladies that instantly stole the spotlight with their peerless appearance, especially the woman with an aloof expression in the front. Yuan noticed the sudden change in atmosphere and turned to look as well. She's strong. He immediately thought to himself after seeing the beauty in the front. Chapter 1145 Sword Trial. The lady leading the group of beauties had long black hair, purple eyes with a hint of green, and slight makeup around her eyes. She looked incredibly beautiful but also threatening at the same time, like a rose with thorns. These ladies were also exuding an overwhelming aura that nobody there has experienced before. They were clearly all from the upper heavens, especially the purple-eyed lady, who had a similar aura to Silver Dragon Longchen. However, unlike Longchen, who was actively hiding his aura, this lady was letting it flow naturally. These ladies would watch the sword trial from afar while mumbling to each other. It was unclear whether they planned on participating or not, but their presence was so heavy that it made focusing hard for the others. Eventually, people began leaving the line one by one, as they did not want to participate under such an atmosphere. Of course, there were a few that became more motivated since they wanted to impress this group of fairies. The line quickly grew shorter and shorter until there were less than 100 people left. Yuan quickly reached the front of the line, but right when it was his turn to enter the stage, the group of fairies began to move. The group landed in front of him and blocked off his path to the platform while their leader, the purple-eyed beauty, flew onto the stage. "Wait if you don't want to die a pointless death," one of them said to him. Yuan didn't want to argue with them, so he remained silent. "Good luck, senior apprentice Sister Tang. You'll clear this silly trial with ease." These girls began cheering for the purple-eyed beauty, who was surnamed Tang. Shortly after the fairy Tang entered the platform, an array formation in the shape of a circle appeared on the other side of the platform, and a figure would emerge from this circle a moment later. As usual, this figure was wearing a mask, and they had the cultivation of a peak spirit king. Fairy Tang kept the same aloof expression on her face, seemingly unfazed by her opponent. She proceeded to make the first move by pointing her finger at the masked figure. "Scatter," she uttered in a low but confident voice. Whoosh! Thousands of purple-colored flower petals suddenly appeared out of thin air and flew towards the masked figure. A sweet scent filled the air when the flower petals appeared, but when the surrounding cultivators sniffed this scent, their consciousness immediately began fading, and those with a lower cultivation could even feel a numbing sensation in their body. "This is poison?" Although the poison wasn't effective on him, it wasn't completely ineffective either. After all, while his body could take a hit from a spiritual treasure and not receive a scratch, it didn't have much resistance to poison. The purple flower petals quickly clashed with the masked figure like a tidal wave and consumed their entire figure. However, a powerful wave of sword aura suddenly rippled in the area, instantly destroying the thousands of flower petals. Shay. As expected, poison won't work on them. Fairy Tang sucked her teeth in an annoyed manner before she retrieved her weapon, a very thin sword that resembled a rapier, and her body also began radiating with sword auras.com. The sword aura released by Fairy Tang was impressive, but it wouldn't hold a candle to Yuan's sword aura. However, Fairy Tang still managed to defeat her opponent after 25 exchanges. Heavens! That fairy defeated her opponent within 25 strikes. I don't think I have seen anyone defeat the summon in less than 100 strikes. The spectators were filled with awe after witnessing Fairy Tang's performance. As expected of senior apprentice Sister Tang, her group cheered. The other girls in the group proceeded to enter the stage one by one until all of them challenged the sword trial. In the end, all of them passed the trial, but their results greatly differed from each other, ranging between 50 strikes to 100 strikes to defeat their opponent. Heavens! I have never seen so many people pass the trial back to back. To think 7 people participated and 7 passed. Truly a spectacle. Once the whole group of beauties finally finished, Yuan made his way up the platform. "Let's head inside the Sword Temple, senior apprentice Sister Tang," the girls said to her. However, she remained unmoving as her gaze was fixated on the platform. The girls turned to look at Yuan and wondered why she was interested in his match. "Although he's a little handsome, I don't see anything special about him." "What do you see in him, senior apprentice Sister Tang?" Since Yuan had changed out of his golden dragon robe to attract less attention from people like them, he no longer looked as special. "Look around us. He's the only one who doesn't seem affected by my poisonous scent." Fairy Tang spoke in a calm voice. When she mentioned this fact, the others also noticed this phenomenon. "You're right. But is it really that weird? It's not like you're purposefully trying to harm them. Perhaps I am thinking too much about it. Let's go," Fairy Tang said as she turned around. However, before she could even take 2 steps, her entire body froze when a tyrannical pressure suddenly appeared in the area. Who's exerting this pressure? The others were also baffled by this anomaly. They all subconsciously turned to look at the platform. It must be that masked figure. She's the cause of this pressure. Wait. This masked figure is a female? Indeed, standing on the platform about a dozen meters away from Yuan was a masked figure who was clearly a woman with feminine body, but the most damning evidence were the two large peaks on her chest. A masked figure that is a woman. I've never even heard of this before. The spectators were just as surprised as the group of fairies. Yuan narrowed his eyes at this masked figure. He'd watched hundreds of matches before his own, yet none of them had a female opponent, so why did he summon one? Chapter 1146 Sword Trial, 2. After being summoned, the female masked figure started looking around with interest, almost as though she was inspecting her surroundings, a behavior that none of the previous spirits have shown. Her gaze eventually stopped on Yuan, and after a moment of silence, she spoke in a clear voice, "This is the first time I've been summoned since the creation of this place. What's your name?" As she's having a conversation with her opponent? The spectators were beyond shocked by this. The spirits in the sword trial have never spoken a single word before. This is the first time it's a woman, too. My name is Xiao Yang. Yuan introduced himself. Really? To his surprise, the female spirit questioned his answer, almost as if she didn't believe him. I don't like liars, you know, she continued. Yuan decided to remain silent. Well, whatever. Anyways, are you ready to fight me? I hope you can entertain me. Yuan immediately retrieved the Empyrean Overlord. The spirit's body trembled when she saw the beautiful sword in his grasp. You? Why do you have that sword? The spirit muttered in a low voice that sounded to be in disbelief. 'Cause it's mine, he calmly responded. Bullshit. The spirit suddenly roared, and a tyrannical aura exploded from her body, causing the spectators to scatter away from the platform. That's my master's sword. How dare you defile it with your unworthy hands? Before Yuan could even respond, the female spirit suddenly sprang into action, rushing towards him as a large greatsword appeared in her grasp. Boom! A powerful shockwave appeared when their swords clashed, and Yuan was actually pushed back by the spirit. When he stabilized himself, he could feel his entire arm shaking. Shit! What terrifying strength! Yuan cried inwardly, and he realized that this could be the most difficult challenge he's faced in this place yet. Die! The spirit did not spare Yuan any time to think and continued to rush at him with her attacks growing stronger with every strike. Clang! 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 The spirit eventually started using sword aura, causing ripples filled with sword aura to scatter everywhere, destroying the platform and the surroundings. Heavens! What am I witnessing? The group of fairies from the upper heavens were baffled by the fierce battle, something they thought could only happen in the upper heavens, especially Fairy Tang, who was in disbelief for another reason. How? How did he manage to summon an opponent who was far stronger than mine? Fairy Tang wondered to herself why her spirit was inferior. The difference between Yuan's opponent and her own, they couldn't even be compared. As far as I know, the sword trial adjusts the spirits based on the challenger's talent. Does this mean the sword trial believes that my talent is inferior to that man's talent? That I am inferior to a nobody from the third heaven? Impossible. Fairy Tang gritted her teeth in frustration. Her existence has always been compared to the others since birth, yet she's always at the top, even when compared to those from powerful families, so she could have never imagined that she'd feel inferior to someone that isn't even from the upper heavens. As time passed, the spectators would become more and more speechless. Heavens! They have been going at it for hours now. It's not weird for the spirit to not get tired, but that young man is a different story. Just how much energy does he have? Although it may seem like Yuan has unlimited energy like the spirit, it isn't as simple as that. His body, from his muscles to his bones, are damaged and destroyed with every exchange, but due to his perfect regeneration, it completely heals itself before the next exchange. Of course, even if his body is fine, one's mental state usually degrades as a fight prolongs, but due to Heaven's indomitable soul, his mind that is affected by soul strength not only refreshes itself, it also grows stronger with every second. Therefore, if he isn't damaged faster than he could heal, and if he doesn't use too much soul strength at once, he could potentially fight for an eternity without any breaks. The female spirit, who had been cursing Yuan non-stop at the beginning, also became quiet. Minutes turned to hours, and hours turned to days. In the blink of an eye, Yuan and the spirit had been fighting each other for 5 days straight now. More and more people have shown up at the place just to witness their legendary fight, including the Silver Dragon, who rushed over after hearing the news. "How long have they been fighting?" one of the newcomers asked. "They've been at it for 5 days now." "F5? Are you messing with me? There's no way anyone can fight that long with such intensity." "You don't have to believe me. You can ask the others." Meanwhile, Silver Dragon Longchin hovered in the air with a pondering expression on his face. They've been fighting at this pace for 5 days now, yet neither of them are using their full strength. That Xiao Yang, is he using that spirit for training? Even if that's the case, why is the spirit going along with him? He wondered, as he thought that the spirits were meant to defeat the challengers as soon as possible. It was at this moment that he noticed the group of beauties standing near the entrance of the Sword Temple. "So she's also here, huh?" A smile appeared on his face when he saw the expression on her face. He didn't think he would ever get the chance to see such a sight. So even the Poison Phoenix can feel jealousy. What a surprising find. He approached her a moment later. However, Fairy Tang didn't sense his presence until he was right beside her. "It's been a while, Poison Phoenix." Silver Dragon greeted her with a somewhat cheeky smile. Fairy Tang glared at him with a cold gaze as she spoke. "What do you want, Silver Dragon?" Chapter 1147 Sword Trial, 3. Upon sensing the Poison Phoenix's unwelcoming aura, Silver Dragon remained calm as he chuckled. "I don't really want anything from you." "Then why are you bothering me?" "Go away, as far as possible, until I cannot see your annoying face with my divine sense." Poison Phoenix coldly sneered. "Even though I don't need anything from you, I couldn't help but notice you staring at my friend very intently." Silver Dragon said, still with a smile on his face. Poison Phoenix's expression changed drastically after hearing his words, and she quickly asked, "Your friend? You know that man?" "Oh ho! Am I thinking too much, or is the Poison Phoenix, who is prominent for having no interest in anything, actually interested in someone, a man, at that?" Silver Dragon spoke in a teasing voice. Poison Phoenix began emitting killing intent. "If you value your life, you better watch your mouth when you speak to me, you half-breed dragon." Her words wiped the smile off Silver Dragon's face, who also started emitting killing intent. The ladies with Poison Phoenix shuddered at their clashing killing intent, but the 4 dragons and phoenixes often fought with each other due to their rivalry nature, so they weren't surprised at all. Oof. Silver Dragon was the first to retrieve his killing intent. "Forget it. I'm not going to fight with you here, especially since it will disturb the sword trial. You know what happens if someone disturbs an ongoing challenge in this place, right? I'm not stupid like you." Poison Phoenix also retracted her killing intent. There was a strict rule that everyone must follow while inside the Nameless Emperor's tomb. This rule prohibited anyone from disturbing an ongoing trial. Those who violate this rule will be executed on the spot. However, even though most people know this rule, there will also still be those who are either ignorant or don't care about the rule. Why the fuck is he taking so damn long? Can't he see that there are other people waiting to take the trial? Does he think we have an unlimited amount of time in this place or something? A bulky man with long wavy hair and a crusty beard suddenly jumped out of the crowd in towards the platform. "If you're going to take your sweet ass time, I'll end this for you right now." "Stop. What do you think you're doing?" The spectators there shouted at him to stop, but nobody dared to physically intervene. Once the bearded man was about 50 meters away from the platform, an unfathomable pressure suddenly that could only be felt by the man appeared, and it halted the man mid-air. "It's over for him. What an idiot!" The spectators merely shook their heads upon seeing this. The next second, the bearded man's expression became filled with horror as his body began twisting like a pretzel stick until it could no longer withstand the pressure and burst like a balloon. Strangely enough, there was no blood or meat showering the crowd below, almost as though his body was made of air. A second after the man's gruesome death that was witnessed by all, a profound voice resounded in the head of everyone there excluding Yuan. "Without exception, those who dare to disturb the trial will be executed." This voice that was backed by an unfathomable strength sent chills down their spine, with some even falling on their butt. "The creator of this place is truly something else," Silver Dragon mumbled with a nervous smile on his face. "Hey, how do you think he would fare against the peak experts in the Supreme Heaven?" He turned to look at Poison Phoenix. "Why are you still here? Get lost." Silver Dragon shrugged and turned around to leave, but he stopped again after 2 steps. "Oh, right, do you still want to know about that man?" He turned to ask her. "Scram!" Poison Phoenix growled in a low voice. However, instead of leaving, Silver Dragon decided to stay and start speaking without looking at her, almost as though he was talking to himself. "Honestly, I don't know much about him either. His name is Xiaoyang, and we met not long ago at the Sword Pagoda." When Silver Dragon started talking, Poison Phoenix acted like she couldn't care less, but she was actually listening with interest. Silver Dragon spoke about how they met and Xiaoyang's achievements at the Sword Pagoda. Meanwhile, on the platform, Yuan was still focused on his training using the spirit. Since the spirit doesn't seem to have any intentions on defeating him as soon as possible, he wanted to take this chance to train himself, especially since he rarely encounters a powerful opponent like the spirit. As for the spirit, she knew very well what Yuan was trying to do, but she didn't care about it, as this was her first time being summoned since the creation of the Nameless Emperor's tomb, and as a battle junkie herself, she wanted the fight to last as long as possible. However, she eventually couldn't be satisfied with their current pace, so she began increasing her power and speed to make things more entertaining. "If I increased the pace by another 15%, would he be able to keep up?" The spirit wondered inwardly. But before she could even decide, Yuan suddenly decided to speed up the pace by another 20%. This caught the spirit by surprise, causing her to miss one of Yuan's strikes for the first time. Crack! The tip of Yuan's sword only managed to brush against her mask, but due to the sword aura surrounding the blade, it damaged the mask just enough to cut a portion off. The spirit stopped fighting and stood still after she realized what had just happened. "You little bastard! How dare you damage my mask?" The spirit spoke in a cold voice before she proceeded to remove the rest of the mask, revealing her face to the crowd. Yuan's eyes widened with surprise after seeing her face, and he subconsciously muttered, "Li Jinxi?" Chapter 1148 Jinxi. To say Yuan was surprised to see Li Jinxi's face behind the mask of the female spirit would be an understatement. "HM? Do I know you?" The spirit suddenly asked him with raised eyebrows. "Ha?" Yuan stared at her with a baffled face. "Why do you know my name?" "I don't recall introducing myself." "Your name is Li Jinxi?" Yuan asked for confirmation. "No, my name is Jinxi." Yuan was speechless. After snapping out of it, he said, "You're mistaken. I don't know you, but you do resemble someone that I know, and even your name is quite similar." "Is that so? Then let us continue our fight." "I'm going to stop going easy on you now," she said. Yuan immediately got into position and prepared to clash with her again. However, Jinxi's body suddenly erupted with a sharp aura that made those who sensed it feel like they were hundreds of swords stabbing their body, making it difficult to breathe. Despite that, almost nobody there knew what they were sensing, and only those from the upper heavens had an idea. Enhanced sword aura. Silver Dragon muttered with awe all over his surprised face. Poison Phoenix gritted her teeth in frustration. Even though she doesn't have enhanced sword aura herself, she was experienced enough to understand it when she senses it. However, for everyone else there, they had no idea that enhanced sword aura even existed. Seeing Yuan's dazed face, a cheeky smile appeared on Jinshi's face, and she spoke, "Don't tell me this is enough to make you quit?" "Hardly." Yuan chuckled before activating his own enhanced sword aura, but since he'd only recently learned it, it was a little inferior to Jinshi's enhanced sword aura. "He also knows enhanced sword aura?" Silver Dragon exclaimed after seeing it with his own eyes. Someone from the third heaven really managed to comprehend enhanced sword aura? If he'd been born in the supreme heaven, just how terrifying would he be right now? He wondered inwardly. "Ready or not, here I come," Jinshi shouted right before she began her assault. Clang! Bits and pieces of their enhanced sword aura would scatter after each exchange, sending them flying towards the spectators. When the spectators noticed that their clothes were being cut by an invisible force, they immediately started running away from the stage. Within mere seconds, pretty much everyone besides Silver Dragon, Poison Phoenix, and her friends were hundreds of meters away from the platform. "Ha ha ha! This is what I am talking about." Jinshi's laughter echoed loudly. "Besides my master, you are the only other person who can satisfy my itch." Jinshi's movement would become faster and faster, and her sword techniques would become sharper and fiercer. Yuan tried to keep up with Jinshi's pace, but since this was his first time fighting with enhanced sword aura, he had to put more effort into maintaining his sword aura than anything else. Because of this, Jinshi would land a few hits on him, but his injuries would heal almost instantly. "Are you even human, you bastard?" Jinshi cursed at him when she saw his ridiculous healing abilities. The two of them would continue at this pace for a few more hours. Even though Jinshi was seriously trying to win at this moment, she couldn't deal any significant damage to Yuan, and it only got harder to hit him as time passed, as Yuan was improving at a rapid rate. It took almost half a day, but Yuan's control with his enhanced sword aura eventually became as natural as breathing. This allowed him to focus more on his technique and defeating Jinshi. "I think it's about time that we end this. Thank you for the training, Jinshi," Yuan said to her before his aura exploded. "You're 1,000 years too early to even think about defeating me, Junior." Jinshi roared, the veins in her arms bulging with vitality. Perhaps Jinshi had the power to defeat Yuan, but because she was only a mere spirit, her strength was limited, and she was destined to be defeated by Yuan today. After several more exchanges, Yuan managed to break through Jinshi's defenses and slice her body into two. Jinshi's face was filled with disbelief for her last few moments before her body disappeared into thin air. Yuan stood on the stage and silently stared at where Jinshi disappeared. "I should have asked her about her relationship with my incarnation before I defeated her." He sighed inwardly after realizing this missed chance. However, right as he started to walk off the platform, he suddenly felt a familiar presence appear from behind him. He turned around, and to his surprise, Jinshi had reappeared again. "What is the meaning of this? I thought I had already passed the sword trial," Yuan said to her. "Indeed, you have passed the trial," Jinshi confirmed. "Then what are you still doing here?" Yuan raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. "Is there a reason why I cannot be here?" She responded with a question. Yuan wasn't sure how to answer her question. "In the first place, don't compare me with the other spirits. I have a consciousness of my own even if it's artificial," Jinshi then said. "Like the master of this place?" She nodded, "Something like that. Anyways, besides fighting whoever summoned me, I also have a duty to guide them, so we will be together for a little longer." "Are you disappointed?" "No, I still have some questions for you, after all." Yuan smiled. "They can wait until you're finished with the Sword Temple. Follow me, I will guide you." Everybody there watched as Jin Shi, a spirit, left the platform for the first time. Yuan didn't say anything else and followed her. As they both approached the Sword Temple, a group of figures suddenly appeared out of nowhere to block their path. "Hello?" Yuan said to the group with raised eyebrows as he wondered what they wanted from him. Chapter 1149 Poison Phoenix. "Can I help you?" Yuan asked the group of beauties standing before him. "How rude. Do you know who you are standing before?" One of the girls suddenly spoke in a displeased manner. Yuan raised his eyebrows. "I don't," he answered without hesitation and with a straight face. This caught the girl who just spoke off guard. "So, who are you guys?" Yuan didn't wait for the girl to respond and asked. "I am Tang Meili, one of 4 dragons and phoenixes, also known as Poison Phoenix. You've heard of us, right?" If Silver Dragon hadn't told her about Yuan, she would have definitely assumed that he had no idea about the 4 dragons and phoenixes. After all, they only existed in the Supreme Heaven. "Yes, I have heard about you guys before. So, how can I help you, Poison Phoenix? Now that you know my identity, you still dare to speak so casually? You're an arrogant one." Poison Phoenix sneered, but she didn't really sound bothered by it. And she continued, "Anyways, my Tang family happens to be hiring more servants. Although you don't really qualify at this moment, I'm willing to make an exception. Become my servant." Yuan was speechless. He didn't expect for her to suddenly recruit her as a servant. After snapping out of it, he chuckled, "Are you always like this?" Tang Meili frowned and muttered in a low but cold voice, "What do you mean? And before you answer, I urge you to really think about your words, as there will be consequences for offending me." Yuan showed a daring smile. "There you go again. How can you say such words with such a calm face? There should be a limit to one's arrogance. Even if you came from the upper heavens, you don't own everyone here, so don't act and speak like you do." Tang Meili's body visibly trembled after she heard his words. "How dare you? You're courting death, you insolent bastard. You think you're untouchable just because you are a little talented? I'll show you." The girls with Tang Meili exploded with anger before she could even respond. "Let's all calm down, shall we?" A familiar voice suddenly resounded. It was Long Chen. "I thought I told him to not follow me." This was the first thing that came to Yuan's mind when he saw Long Chen. "Calm down? I will calm down after I cut off his tongue," one of the girls said as she leaped forward and swung her weapon at Yuan's face. Ding! Long Chen quickly reacted by deflecting the attack. Scram! Long Chen roared, his aura exploding like a bomb. Ah! The girl who clashed with him was sent flying backwards. His title as Silver Dragon wasn't for nothing. In this place, perhaps only Poison Phoenix could fight him properly. Let's attack him together. Even he cannot defeat all of us while his cultivation is restricted to Spirit King. Someone suggested. However, before they could act, Tang Meili shouted, "All of you stand down." The place became silent again. "You want to have a go with me? It's been many years since our last exchange, after all." Long Chen beckoned her with a confident smile. "Poof." Tang Meili sneered at his words, and she said, "I don't have any business with you today, Silver Dragon." After saying that, she approached Yuan, and despite Long Chen standing between them, she completely ignored him and walked right past him. Long Chen didn't try to stop her since he didn't feel any killing intent from her, but he still kept an eye on her just in case. Tang Meili stopped once she was in front of Yuan. "I will only ask you this one time. Are you sure you don't want to serve me? My Tang family is one of the top 10 families in the Supreme Heaven. Although you will only be a servant, nobody would dare to mess with you. If you put in enough work, you might even be allowed to learn our family techniques." Despite Yuan's earlier remarks that would normally result in a death sentence from her, she still approved and desired his talents. After all, someone who could learn enhanced sword aura in this kind of environment and at his age would be hard to find even in the supreme heaven. "Thank you for the offer, but I will have to refuse," Yuan responded without needing to think about it. "Is that so?" Tang Meili closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them, they were resolute and emitted a ruthless aura. "If you're not going to join us, then I don't need to worry about breaking you." Tang Meili's words implied that she was going to destroy him, but she didn't do that and simply turned around and began walking away. "Senior sister, you should break his limbs at the very least for looking down on you. I'm not the type that enjoys stepping on ants, but I will kill him if he ever dares to step foot in the supreme heaven," Tang Meili said in a cold voice. "That's it? I was hoping for a good show." "Jean," she said in a disappointed tone after Tang Meili and her group were gone. Yuan looked at her with slightly widened eyes and said, "You're going to let them attack me? What kind of guide are you?" "Jean," she shrugged, "I'm your guide, not your guardian. And you already have a guardian, so why are you expecting something from me?" Yuan turned to look at Long Chen, who was silently smiling at him. "Is everyone in the supreme heaven like that?" Long Chen shrugged, "I can't speak for everyone, but that's how many people in the supreme heaven view those from a lower realm. After all, even beggars up there have a higher cultivation than everyone down here." Though, the poison phoenix showed a lot of restraint back there. Normally, she'd kill anyone that dares to talk back to her. "Is that so? What about you? How do you view the people down here?" Yuan suddenly asked him. A cold smile appeared on Long Chen's face as he replied, "Of course, you're all nothing but ants in my eyes." "You think I am an ant as well?" Yuan raised an eyebrow. "In your current state?" "Yes, you are. I don't mean to sound conceited, but even with my cultivation restricted, I can easily crush you with a single finger. You may have potential, but that's all you are right now, potential." Long Chen continued, "You are probably thinking that you have a few cards up your sleeve since I haven't seen you fight at 100%, but the same goes for you." Yuan shrugged, "Even if you are wrong, I have no reason to prove you wrong. If you have nothing else to say, I am going to leave." Long Chen was slightly shaken when he noticed Yuan's unwavering eyes. Does he really believe that he could have a proper fight with me? He almost couldn't believe it. However, before he could even say anything, Yuan had already left his side and entered the Sword Temple. Since he has yet to pass the sword trial, Long Chen could only watch as Yuan's back disappeared into the building. Chapter 1150 Sword Temple. As I thought, it's dangerous for me to be around these people from the upper heavens. They're nothing but trouble. Yuan sighed inwardly as he entered the Sword Temple with Jinshi. Inside the Sword Temple was so dark that Yuan couldn't even see his own hands, almost as if he'd entered the void. What kind of place is the Sword Temple? This seems different from what I've read about. Yuan asked out loud. Even if he couldn't see her, he could feel Jinshi's presence beside him. The Sword Temple is different for everyone. What you see and hear will depend on your talents and fate. Yuan didn't say anything else and proceeded to wait for something to happen. However, when nothing happened even a few minutes later, he spoke again, "So, what am I waiting for? Be patient. The Sword Temple is possessing your information. It could take hours to days until it finishes," she said. "Should have said so earlier." Yuan sighed. He then took a seat and closed his eyes. "Hey, can I ask you some questions?" Yuan decided to start a conversation while they waited. "That depends on the question. The one you address as master, is he the creator of this tomb?" He was pretty confident he already knew the answer to this question, but he wanted to be sure. "That's right. My master is all-knowing and powerful. There's nobody in the 9 heavens stronger than him." She spoke in a bragging manner. "What's your relationship with him? How did you end up as his servant?" "Servant?" What an outrageous assumption, you asshole. What made you think I was serving him? You're not? The way you act, I guess. I call him master because I am his disciple. She exclaimed, sounding quite offended. Oh, really? My bad. Yuan was surprised. He didn't expect to have disciples in his past life. Though, if he thought about it, it wasn't too shocking. So did he own a sect? No. Master wasn't the type to stay in one place for long. He's always traveling. Even if he did, he wasn't exactly sect master material. Then how did you end up as his disciple? She fell silent for some reason. I don't want to talk about it, she mumbled a moment later. Then tell me about him. What kind of person was he? Yuan asked. Poof. You've already asked enough questions. It's my turn to ask some, she said. And she continued, first of all, where did you get that sword from the sword trial? The Empyrean Overlord? So you even know its name. I acquired it from someone else. She found it in this place, too. Is that so? And it accepted you as its master, right? That's right. Who are you, really? She then asked. Xiao Yang. Don't give me that shit again. Your real name. Yuan smiled. My name is Yuan, and I came from a place called Earth. Earth? Never heard of it. Well, it's not within the 9 heavens, so I am not surprised. As ridiculous as it sounded, she didn't call him a liar, almost as if she knew. Why did you come to this place? She suddenly asked. Fate brought me here, I think. She sneered at his answer for some reason. What's wrong? Yuan asked. You sounded like my master, who always talks about fate. Really? Can you tell me about him? The creator of this place is shrouded with countless mysteries, after all. After a moment of silence, she spoke. Even though I've known him for thousands of years and even followed him for a good majority of those years, there's a lot that I still don't know about him. Hell, I don't even know what he looks like since he's always wearing a stupid mask for some reason. Well, you do now. Yuan smiled inwardly. Master was always in the spotlight, even during his childhood. His immense, heaven-defying talents would attract attention no matter where he went. He also had a lot of enemies and couldn't go a week without fighting someone, most of them being people who envied his talents. Master learned Sword Aura at a young age and mastered Enhanced Sword Aura before he even turned 30, earning him the title of Godly Sword Emperor. He is also the first and only person to have ever reached the level of whatever is beyond Enhanced Sword Aura. He was so famous that his existence was known throughout the 9 heavens, yet it seemed like nobody knew his true name or face. I wanted to follow him until the end of time, but alas. She sounded disappointed towards the end, even a little regretful. Did something happen? Yuan decided to dig deeper. However, she shook her head and said, I don't know. That's the extent of my memories. Is that so? Then do you know why he created this place? Nope. She answered without hesitation. Master's thoughts are too profound for someone like me. All I am good for is swinging the sword. Yuan couldn't help but chuckle at her words. She greatly resembled Li Jinsi not just in appearance but nature as well. He wanted to say something, but his attention was stolen by a white glow that had suddenly appeared in the distance. What's that? He asked. You're about to find out, she said. Whoosh! The white glow that started out as a small dot quickly expanded until it consumed all of the void, turning the entire place white. Thud! 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 The sound of approaching footsteps began echoing in the place shortly after. Jinxi's eyes slowly widened as she recognized this familiar sound. A tall figure wearing an ordinary-looking mask appeared in the distance a moment later. Master! Jean, she muttered in a trembling voice as she slowly kneeled on the floor and lowered her head. The masked man stopped in front of Yuan. "Welcome to the Sword Temple," he said.